Hello and welcome to the Crate and Crowbar. This is episode 202. It is the 16th of August and I am your host, Philippa War. Joining me today are Christopher Thurston.
Hi.
And Thomas Francis.
Hello.
Wow, full names, Pip. What did we do?
Well, I mean, I would have used middle names if you both were in trouble.
Oh, okay, good.
I thought we would just formal this shit up, you know?
Wow, you really formaled the fuck out of it.
I am in a ball gown. Those two are in tuxedos. It's all go.
Do you know my middle name?
I think you have told me this several times before because it's one of those questions that usually comes up. But then we always get really distracted by the fact that someone we know has an amazing bird of prey as their middle name. So that always pushes the information out of...
Would this be Tim Stone?
I didn't really think I should name him in case it's his password for things.
Well, we haven't said his middle name, so... You'd have to go through all the birds of prey.
That's true. Peregrine Falcon.
Who would make their password their middle name?
Who would make that their middle name?
I don't think he had a choice.
I think at some point I did know what your middle name was.
Well, this is good because it means neither of you can tell me off.
I feel like it's going to be like something that when you tell us, we'll know.
It's not interesting or anything. I was
like,
just curious.
Retrospectively. Well, you'll be the man with 3 first names.
That's a good guess.
To be fair, I've got 3 first names, but only on account of having 2 middle names.
Same.
So it's not news, is it?
Anthony.
Is it Anthony? No.
I didn't build this as news. I didn't say, here's the news. I just said who you two are, and you objected to your own name.
I didn't object.
It's gone well so far.
It just stood out. It just stood out to me because you used all 11 characters of it.
Well, okay, well, here's CT. And everyone would just be like...
I used to be called CJ when I was a kid. That's a fun fact.
No, you didn't. You used to be called Kit.
Kit or CJ, interchangeably.
That's
Wow.
stupid.
Those are both quite American.
Yeah, they were. Yeah, I don't know why. I didn't go there until I was 20.
Were you, as a child, the press secretary for all the White House?
No, I wasn't. Nor was I Pamela Anderson's character from Baywatch.
You could have performed the jackal.
I could have done, but I was a child.
Okay, well...
But anyway, that's, again, we're just sharing not particularly interesting facts about me, and
I
keep
breezed
coming.
through that as if it was, like, really professional and
There's no
really
breezing through anything.
succinct, and now we've just mired in the...
It's not a bit until it's dead. That's my motto.
You and your horses. This has been an evening of horses.
It has.
We've pre-gamed.
Can you tell?
Just FYI. What's the news this week, Christopher and/or Thomas? And/or Francis?
Francis is here too, my nemesis.
Is that your middle name? And/or?
And/or, that's actually that is an amazing middle name to give someone whose surname is also
Thomas
first name.
And/or Francis. Take your pick. Take your pick as my 4th name.
You could bodge it a bit with like Sandor, like in Sandor Clegane from Game of Thrones.
Although,
Tom Sandor.
if you're
Alex Sandor,
if you prided yourself on being indecisive, so you'd be like, just make a decision. Like, no, and/or is my middle name.
Speaking of people who can't decide on their names,
that's well done. Well segued.
Blizzard have changed the name of their...
Oh my god, that does work.
Back from... they changed Battle.net to Blizzard app, and then they changed it back again.
Well, wasn't it like Blizzard and then like whatever verb it was? Like
It's Blizzard Battle.net.
Or like it was Blizzard Streaming, and it was
right.
Blizzard Voice, and it was like all of those other things were going to come together under the brand. But then everyone was like, but you haven't actually changed the name of the service, and the website is still battle.net, and also everyone knows what battle.net is, and what are you doing? So then they scored a marketing win by double rebranding it as Blizzard Battle.net.
Yeah, probably to increase the total number of people who know what that is.
Oh, yeah.
Certainly increased the total number of things written or said about the name of that piece of software in the last month. Good job. Good job.
Well,
Speaking of marketing,
Oh, God.
more fun with marketing this week through the XCOM 2 propaganda poster app. Speaking of apps, well, that's just segues a go-go.
Ahead of War of the Chosen, which is the DLC that's coming out at the end of this month.
I think so.
And they've released, a standalone app that lets you kind of pose soldiers against backgrounds and put text on them to make propaganda posters for the resistance. And I think, if you have the game, then it uses your actual soldiers, right?
I think so. I mean,
what I don't know is, none of us have War of the Chosen yet, but if you just have XCOM 2, does it use those soldiers?
I don't know, Tom. It certainly has all the same assets in it, because that's the basis of, probably the reason we're bringing this up, which is the many pretty funny purposes this software has been used for.
It's quite nice because it kind of invites it rather than it sort of trying to do something relatively naive and then being absolutely scuppered by the fact that the internet does not take kindly to branding exercises.
Yeah, I think letting the community fuck it up for themselves is the best way. Our favourite, do you want to read it?
Our favourite is just a woman with a shock of white hair pointing like Uncle Sam or Lord Kitchener in front of a picture of what are they called? The snake people from...
Vipers?
Vipers, a viper from XCOM 2 with the caption, "Winners don't fuck snake people." Don't fuck them.
The second line is written kind of in blood and scroll underneath them, as if it's, for some reason it reads as if it's
like
whispered.
a Comic Sans blood scroll.
Winners don't fuck snake people. Don't fuck them.
Just to reinforce the key point in the message, I think it's a very effective piece of...
I don't know
anything about marketing.
That blood font reminds me of, when you see lyrics written out and then like the posse in the background who are doing the sort of the chorus refrains, like that stuff is bracketed out. This feels like there would be a kind of, corpsey backdrop kind of, uttering the refrain.
Either way, it's just nice to see. It's nice to see people resolutely taking the piss out of the game in a way that everyone can enjoy.
Yep.
Is there any other news? Do we have news?
There's a Prey demo now on PC. Might be worth mentioning briefly. There was a demo earlier in the year, but it was console exclusive for the second best space station exploration simulator, but the best one where you can be a cup, released this year. Pip's giving me that look again. But
did you say what can you be?
A cup.
I thought you said a cop.
Cop.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Well, I
thought maybe I
Space
thought
Cop.
for a second someone had bade Space Precinct, and then I was interested.
Oh yeah. Well, I'd have been interested as well, but no, I said cup. But nonetheless, there's a demo out on Steam. So if you haven't played Prey, which is excellent, then this is a good opportunity to do that.
I think it's the same as the demo I played on console, which is, they call it the first hour, but actually it's the first sort of hub, and I spent like 4 hours on it.
It's the first extremely milkable hub area.
Yeah.
Highly
milkable hubs.
It's a very, very milkable hub. I mean, I think
Isn't that just an udder?
No, we've disrupted the udder. It's a milkable hub now.
Demo is...
CJ is my disruption name.
Demo is an anagram of dome, though, and Hudders are like domes. Udders, even.
Hudders.
Huddersfield.
What are we talking about?
Domes. So now there's a free dome for thingy.
There's a
your game.
Milkable dome hubs.
There's a milkable dome for Yape.
This is not news. Well, you just anagram Prey, and it couldn't help but evoke in my mind that I noticed recently that I was playing Pyre and Prey one after the other. They're right next to each other on my Steam list, and they're the same letters.
I think it was someone on Twitter, I think it might have been Carolyn, who made that joke, but as a kind of... the best game that uses those letters in this order, is whichever, burn you want to apply, I guess.
That is a much better observation than what I just said, because I've just realised what I said isn't even an anagram for Prey.
It's like when like when Lisa Simpson goes to that guy's house and it's like, oh, we like to play anagram games, and they give her like Jeremy Irons to make an anagram from, and she's like, Jeremy's iron. You're kind of sat there like, pray, it's an anagram of Epre.
Yape. But actually, that'd be yerp. That was my mistake. And someone somewhere will have shouted that at their podcast.
I like that when they go to Kyoto in Futurama, the motto for that town is the anagram lovers Tokyo. In the same way that Pyre is the anagram lovers Prey.
Wow. Both Simpsons and Futurama. Both great. That's our news.
I don't think I've got any other news. I'm trying to think. I've been writing it at points this week and nothing's coming to mind.
No, I haven't really paid that much attention to...
Well, good. Although, something caught my eye that I had done absolutely no research on because I thought that it was something else. So, no, but The Pillars of the Earth is now out, and I had entirely spent its whole marketing cycle assuming it was Pillars of Eternity.
Yeah.
And just sort of skim reading it. And it isn't. Apparently it's a sort of point and click / storytelling choice game about building cathedrals in 12th century England, and I'm like, I am so on board with this right now.
That is the most you thing.
That's my jam. So that is a thing that I want to try and carve out a bit of time for. Pun intended, because of all the carving that they did.
Yeah, imagine they did.
I did a whole module in my undergraduate degree on the building of Canterbury Cathedral, a lot of which was built in the 12th century and beyond. It was obviously also built previously, but there were fires, and then the murder of Thomas Becket happened, and then there was a whole kind of, we need to accommodate the tourists, because of all the veneration that was going on.
Did you just skip about 800 years?
What do you mean?
Between tourists and Thomas Becket?
No, because Thomas Becket got killed in 1170. And, the tourism happened pretty quickly afterwards. It was all kind of like, let's go and venerate your old Thomas, right?
In private, please.
Oh, is that a sex thing?
Oh.
Oh. Is it?
It's not. It wasn't until you said it.
If you'd said John Thomas, then yes. I mean, but you were close enough.
There's a place in the cathedral called the Corona, which is like Thomas's crown chapel. Is that a sex thing as well?
It depends what you do there.
Okay, well, and the tip of the martyring sword got broken off. So is that I'm confused now. Is this?
It's just the phrase "venerate your old Thomas" is funny.
Oh,
it's just a funny phrase, Pip.
Well. But anyway,
your middle name isn't Old Thomas, is it?
No. Thomas Old Thomas Francis. Yeah. And/or.
Thomas Francis.
Thomas
Tom,
and/or Old Thomas.
Tom. No, but anyway, I just thought I would mention that because it sounded like a game that would have actually totally passed me by simply because it's got caught up in a lot of POE kind of acronyms and a lot of pillars of...
More COE than POE, if you know what I mean. Why don't I work in marketing?
No, because it was a good, 300 or 400 years prior to that, right?
That's true.
Sorry.
But was it closer in time to that than Pillars of Eternity?
Yes. Anyway.
There's another small item of news, which is just that West of Loathing is out. From sometime Crate and Crowbar guest Zach Johnson and
one time
friends.
Not that he can come back, but it wasn't.
You're barred.
You're not banned, Zach. Good news. And is getting rave reviews and people loving it. I haven't played any more since I last talked about it, but I did see that somebody posted a screenshot of the graphics menu. It doesn't sound like it's going to be good, but wait for it. And the graphic settings are good, bad, and ugly.
Nice.
That's awesome. The graphic settings for Dream Daddy are, I think it's Dad, Daddy, and Daddiest. And it's I'm not entirely sure which direction I'm going in with those. Which is the best? I'm assuming Daddiest, but maybe if I do... I don't know.
It'd be great if we just didn't change anything.
We could talk about news. Other things. What's the other thing that we do? What we're playing?
Well, we can link those two things together by saying that the other thing that's happened is No Man's Sky got its big update.
Oh yeah.
Its big
Atlas Rises.
Atlas Rises. And we've all played a bit of that.
Is that... Sorry, did Atlas shrug and then he was able to rise because he shrugged the thing
Well,
off?
it was like he was shrugging and he was like, I might as well get up.
Atlas, get up, no.
Well, I've dropped it now.
Oh, God.
I made that Atlas shrugged pun so many times at launch, and like I think I kept missing my window for shoehorning it into someone's news article. So that was annoying. But yeah, the update. And so it's the one that has sort of started to maybe make tiny baby steps towards multiplayer.
Yeah.
Which
Actually,
is interesting.
when I saw the post about this, I kind of thought that they might get mocked for this a bit because it's a huge update. It's got 30 hours of story content somehow. I don't understand how that's possible, but apparently it does.
I didn't even play like the 1 hour that they had previously. I was like, I'm going to go take pictures of plants.
It has a new mission system, it has a whole bunch of other stuff, and then it introduces multiplayer of sorts where the sort of, I can't remember if it's a screenshot or a video I saw, but I think it's a video. And the other players, you can have up to 16, I think, in the same sort of locale.
GIF. They embedded a GIF on their notes page, their patch notes.
But the other players are just essentially like wisps, just little balls of light, and you can see them kind of jumping around and stuff, but it looks kind of absurd because they're not embodied.
There's like a hub cluster with like a glowing point, isn't there? And then you can kind of, you get local voice chat, but not like actual people, I think. And it sounded to me as if you were kind of hearing ghosts. Like that seemed to be, or, you know, kind of, because, I mean, obviously local voice chat exists in games already in other games, but it sounded very specifically disembodied in an interesting seance-y kind of way. And
they refer to this as like a very sort of tentative first step towards multiplayer. Like this is not what it's going to be. It's just a sort of a first step in that direction. And I was a bit worried for them because I thought it kind of, just because it looks kind of funny, I thought they're going to be ripped apart by people saying, "Oh, you promised multiplayer and now there's this." But actually, the reactions have been really positive. Everyone's like giving it another chance. It was one of the most played games on Steam right after the update, and everyone seems really impressed with how much they've added and how much they've changed.
I think that's been nicely the response to all of the news stories I've written about because for some reason it just seems to coincide with when I'm on shift, I think. But so I wrote about the one just before this and sort of explained, you know, just what it was. And I think the majority of the responses were people being pleased that Hello Games were actually sticking with it and trying to sort of improve it and listening to feedback and actually providing these chunky updates rather than, I guess, drip feeding sort of little things that weren't helpful on their own, I guess. Although, you know, when I did, because I tweeted a picture of a thing that I found during my playthrough earlier this afternoon, and one of the tweets I got back was like, is it better than it was at launch? It's like, oh, come on, you know, like this is a boring topic of conversation right now. Like, you know, there are articles to be written about it, about what happened and how it's changed and, you know, that stuff. And it could be really interesting, but I'm kind of done with the harping on that one topic at this point because it's exhausted.
It does feel like the entire team has just been working on it full time ever since launch. It doesn't feel like anything's ramped down at all. It feels like they're just completely focused on working on it as if it's, at the same pace they already were.
So, I mean, I'm guessing none of us have encountered the multiplayer stuff, right?
Nope.
No.
So, but we've all played smatterings of it since the update came out. So, and I think, Tom, you hadn't played it since it came out at this point.
No, I don't think so.
So how was your experience? What was that?
First thing I did was quit and look up the mod for instant interact. You know how you have to hold the button down on every goddamn thing?
Yeah.
That drives me crazy. And I remembered previously I did have that mod, and obviously it's been deprecated and there's a new version and it works. So I had to go and do that. And then first of all, I was worried. Well, I wanted to know, like, I remember hearing about the previous update that it improved the terrain generation a load. And I didn't know whether I would get that having a sort of, if I'm in the middle of a game. And I asked, and I think you and some other people, Pip, said that yes, it would use the new terrain generation for for new stuff you're encountering. And actually someone said it will use it for the old stuff you encountered as well. It will regenerate the things that you had already seen.
I think I was telling you that with one of the previous updates, they'd actually issued a warning that said, because of how it regenerates things and it incorporates this stuff into your existing game, you might well end up like miles away from where you actually thought you were when you quit out last time.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to do, actually. I don't know how they handle that. And yeah, the new... I don't remember what the planets I was in here looked like before. I think they might be different. And just in general, planets look way more interesting to me now. And I found water, or, liquid.
Yeah.
I found seas. I played it for 6 hours or something. I'd never seen any water on any planet at all before this.
Oh, really? I'm encountering it less at the moment, actually.
I just hit a big ass ocean. That's the full spectrum.
Full spectrum ocean. To be honest, I didn't get back into it. I remembered where I was, which was trying to make antimatter to fuel my hyperdrive.
Oh, okay,
and
yeah. So
it's such a many-step process. It's make
ball
this
ache.
to make that,
honest,
and then once you
a
got
ball
that,
ache.
you can make this, and then once you got that, you can make this, and that will get you the suspension gel that then lets you make antimatter. And so I've got I think I must have the blueprint for antimatter, which means if I have the ingredients, I can make antimatter. But one of the things you need is, I think it's suspension liquid or something.
Suspension liquid or suspension fluid, and something else, which you then convert into another intermediary stage prior to converting it with the aid of some other accelerant, I guess, into antimatter that you then translate into a warp core thing that you then plug into your hyperdrive.
And I've got the blueprint, but I don't have the liquid suspension thingy, and then I also don't have the blueprint for the liquid suspension thingy, so I can't make it or know how to make it. So all I can do is buy it, I guess. But I spent ages trying to figure out how to do that. And then also, once I finally did that and I got some antimatter, I can't remember exactly what it was telling me to do, but there's a kind of prompts on screen at all times, or very frequently popping up in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, kind of nagging you about what to do. So when you're in the process of doing it, you sort of can't ignore it. I can't find any way to turn it off except turning off the entire HUD, which is fatal because then it doesn't tell you about burning to death and things. So it's constantly nagging you about something that might not be your actual short-term objective. I just kind of wanted to poodle around for a bit. And then once I did decide, okay, I better focus on this thing and actually do it, it stopped telling me what to do after I got I got some antimatter and it's in my hyperdrive, and I think I just have to go somewhere, but I'm not really sure what. And I remember last time I played, I did.
It's probably telling you to explore the galaxy or maybe go find an anomaly or something. Yeah,
and I just kind of ran out of energy. I simultaneously felt like I had no direction, but also was being nagged all the time about objectives.
Yeah.
And I actually restarted in creative mode or whatever it's called, like sandbox mode.
Yeah. I think it's creative.
Thinking that oh, and also I was just being nagged all the time about inventory. Just every time I do anything, your inventory's full. Even when you're not trying to pick up something new, if your inventory's full, it'll constantly tell you, your inventory's full, as this is something that needs solving right now. And it's like, what do you want me to do? Do you want me to throw something away just so I have a free slot, just so you'll shut up? And I started creative mode, but actually, I didn't explore it thoroughly enough to know if that does take away inventory. I mean, it was kind of I was thinking maybe it takes away your inventory, and then when I started it, I realized it almost doesn't matter whether it does or not, because I don't need to pick anything up, because I don't need to...
like you have unlimited resources at your disposal, so you can just build whatever, you can do whatever, and so it's like you could still theoretically pick stuff up if you wanted, but there's no point to it, I guess. Unless you want to actually start interacting with the characters. I assume, I can't remember, but I assume that they'd still be in there, so maybe there would be some benefit for you having some carbon on you just so that you could help one of the characters or, whatever.
Do you know if you can, use the vehicles and stuff? There's all this stuff they've added since that I don't know how to access it. Apparently there's land vehicles, but I don't know how to go about getting those or doing them.
Haven't done those. I went into creative mode just for a little while to experiment with the base building stuff, because I just couldn't be bothered to go through the hurdles that the game puts in your way, because I think I've actually done a similar thing to you, and I'm probably at a similar stage to you, because I wiped my earlier save because I thought, do you know what, I've forgotten everything that I accidentally did with story mode, and I wasn't engaged with it and I didn't care, And so I will actually give it a fair shot this time round and see, what it's like, and maybe even see about base building or something. And then I found myself just really, it ramps up so slowly and it's so unwieldy and it trips over itself. And yeah, I think what you said was spot on in that it spends a lot of time nagging you, but also feeling like it's meandering, or that it's not really, because at the moment it's telling me, oh, go and explore space and find an anomaly. So there's this nagging prompt in the corner of my screen that I hate seeing. And it means that I'm tempted to just skip through galaxies or star systems that I'm in, just so that I can get rid of it and get on to the next thing. But that's the worst way to play No Man's Sky.
Yeah.
So
I also, I rejected the Atlas thing, whatever that is.
Oh, I said
I remember
yes
that being
this time.
presented as a, do you want to be guided through the galaxy or do you want to do your own thing? So I said, I want to do my own thing. And then A, I'm still getting nagged all the time being told exactly what to do. And B, I keep encountering these things that says, oh no, you can't open this because you didn't get the Atlas Pass. And as far as I know, I can't get the Atlas Pass now. So it's just constantly saying, you did the wrong thing, you did the wrong thing, you did the wrong thing.
I think the Atlas Pass, because I don't have that at the moment. And I think I remember this from previous, because at some point I just went, sod it, and just spent all of my time just getting enough resources to get enough antimatter that I could skip from star system to star system, taking photos of interesting planets that I found along the way and all of that stuff. So the story stuff just absolutely stopped for me and I didn't make any more progress, and was fine with that. But I think I remember you had to do certain things to just build an Atlas, to get the pass and talk to some of the characters along the way. And I'd started to do that, but I just didn't care. And one of the things that I've really noticed, I don't know whether it's become more of a pronounced problem or maybe if they are sorting other things out, other frustrations are more obvious, if you see what I mean. But the interface stuff is really getting on my nerves at the moment, because it's stuff like I need some resources, and so I will do a bit of you need iron to power your pulse drive, which is the thing that takes you between planets within a star system, so it's not the hyperdrive stuff. And so one of the sources of that's really easy to come by is the asteroids that are actually in space, and so you can shoot them with your little ship as you go to the next place, then fuel up and then just keep going. But because I had done a bit of, jiggery pokery with my inventory, you can just press X over a thing to move it to your ship, right? So my free slots were actually in my suit, but I did have free slots. And so I was shooting at things, and then it was like, oh, but your inventory is full. It's like, no, it isn't. It's just that the place where you're trying to put it, which is the ship.
Put the space iron in my trousers.
And so, but it just meant that I had to then pause the thing, or at least try and not crash into things while I dealt with the inventory problem. Open up the inventory, open up the spaceship inventory, and then move the stuff back into my spacesuit just so that it could auto pick up I was like, okay, fine, you've got different caps on things, and obviously it's the game has a logic that it uses with where it puts these things, but ultimately it's just busy work, and it's stupid that you have that busy work when the idea now is that you just can transfer things seamlessly, so it's dumb.
Yeah, I don't know what they gain from making you do that manual transfer process. They want you to want better ships because the ship will have a better inventory. I guess there are better suits as well. I don't know.
Oh my god, I'm now hanging around like a weirdo in a spaceport, just talking to everyone that comes in to find out A, how many spare slots their ship has, and B, whether I can afford it.
Oh, and that's so clunky as well.
Hanging around.
For every ship, I like every ship I see. Yeah. Every ship I see, I want to buy it. And I want to find out how much it costs. And I've got some amount of money, but it hasn't been enough yet.
Yeah.
But for each one, I've got to walk up to them and hold the thing to talk to them, then go through a conversation menu. It zooms you around to see their face. Then you've got to choose this option. Then you've got to choose that option. And then it takes you to a screen where it shows the ship, but you still can't see what it costs. And then you got to press another button to compare them, and then you see what it costs. And it's like, now I know I can't afford it, and this is always.
But it doesn't actually grey out the option if you can't afford it.
Yeah,
so you've
weirdly.
still actually weirdly got the option to like transfer your stuff to their ship and then accidentally quit out and not buy it. Like, cause I had accidentally misread something because I had like 381,000 credits and it cost 385,000, and I had skim read and got the numbers backwards basically, and I thought, I've got just enough, that's awesome, and I've got some change, amazing. So I started transferring my stuff over, then reread it, and I was like, wait, no, I'll be having that stuff back, thank you.
What does this guy think? Just start loading all your possessions into his
I
ship.
live here now.
But yeah, and that's such a, like, I don't want that to sound like it's doing things wrong, because, I mean, obviously there are bits of it which are hideously clunky, and I'm not actually enjoying engaging with the story mode, which is bad, but I'm more than happy to slip back into my photography taking, world skimming, kind of being amazed by all of that stuff. Habits, and also the fact that they are working and adding all of this stuff is really interesting to me, because it feels like they are maybe making a game that is all things in some weird way, and then you can just pick and choose the thing that you want to play within that, which is fascinating.
Yeah. How are you finding it, Chris?
I had the opposite experience to both of you.
Really?
No, well, with some exceptions. I agree about the UI. So I went back in, I deleted my old save, because I thought, I'm going to start again. Like, I wasn't attached to any of the progress that I'd made. I probably hadn't made a lot.
I think we all did that then.
I didn't actually delete mine because I didn't want to go. I remembered it being tedious and I didn't want to repeat it.
But then I looked at the list of, confronted with the list of options, and I thought, permadeath. I'm going to do that.
Oh, wow.
So I've done permadeath 3 times, which means in many ways I've finished No Man's Sky 3 times in 2 hours, which is incredible. Absolutely incredible. Well, and it's interesting. Because, so the first thing that struck me, and the thing I had forgotten, because I liked No Man's Sky initially. I liked it to the tune of like 12 hours of wandering around, and then moved on, felt that I'd gotten my money's worth. But now I come to associate it so much with the controversy that I'd sort of forgotten 2 things about it that I think were always true, although I think the new terrain generation stuff helps with one of them, which is it's an amazing looking game. It really does look incredible. And the second is it's an amazing sounding game. Like the 65 Days of Static soundtrack is brilliant. Like it just in terms of like how distinctive that place feels to be in because of how it sounds. I think I'm very taken with it. I find it very atmospheric and in a way that is unlike any other space game I can think of. Like they have a tendency to be quite cold places. Obviously space is cold, but like, whereas I find that No Man's Sky feels like, it's a place with an identity, even though it's randomly generated because of primarily the music, I think.
I'm finding the sound to be quite, I think the social media friendly term would be to say extra, but like it's quite...
I really like it.
I think because, so I really like the soundtrack and I like a lot about it, but I've started to very much get used to the noises that creatures make, and there seems to be less variation within that than within how they end up looking in some ways. And so I'm sort of, there are particular like yips of pleasure that just feel like weird mulch now to me because they are associated with all small creatures.
Well, I think your ears probably pick up less of variance than you would necessarily from visual stuff. But even the visual identity of the characters sort of meshes together after a while as well.
Well,
to some
yeah,
extent.
but I think so. But also something that I've noticed is that the in between planets, sometimes you just get a bunch of new ships, warping in the manner of like an Eve trailer or something. But that has, I don't know if it's my imagination, but that seems to have got more aggressive. Like it feels louder, and it also feels like it rocks your ship more. And it just feels a lot more bombastic, but in a way that it disturbs my play more than it.
I really like it. I really like it. I mean, I was talking specifically about the music, which is obviously not to sound effects, but like, because I do think the music is great. And so to go back to what I was going to say, so I think initially that experience is really striking. One thing about having this sort of super hardcore way of playing it, because when you play in permadeath mode, it also puts you on survival mode, where all resource requirements are a lot more stringent, apparently, and everything's a lot more rare, and your life support system ticks down basically constantly, to the point where you'll start to take damage. So the first life I had, I got lost in a cave, and the first planet I spawned on was a sort of beautiful radioactive hell planet populated by hench little Ewoks. So there's an experience of the beginning of having begun No Man's Sky 3 times today. There's this particular aspect that the beginning takes on, which I think is a combination of the palette and the music and the atmosphere, and also the hostility of the places you wake up in at the start, which is kind of like The Hangover or something. Like you just sort of like sort of bleary-eyed kind of like come to in some sort of amazing desolate alien wasteland, actively dying, surrounded by unidentifiable creatures with no memory of how you got there. And every time you do that, it's to the game's credit how different it feels. So the first time I got lost in a cave, but I couldn't even repair the scanner to find the thing that allows me to refuel my life support. So I just died in the wilderness. Like nothing I could do. Absolutely nothing you can do, because it ticks down really quickly. Like you always have to be looking for zinc and
you need zinc, thallium,
zinc,
plutonium, and
carbon to an extent, and iron as well.
Iron,
yeah, and it's a very intense resource management game in that mode. Like very demanding. Like if you're ever off pace with each of the 9 different bars you need to be keeping track of, you're fucked. Like, and that's probably bad. Like, I found it really interesting. I found it interesting as an experiment. I don't know if I would play this way permanently, but I found it interesting as a different way of experiencing No Man's Sky, which I remember as a kind of frictionless tour that eventually just sort of lost its luster because you felt like you'd seen everything, even though it's randomly generated. It feels, the thing about playing it as this hardcore survival game, even though I wouldn't normally be into resource management, is it gives you a rapid drip feed of short-term objectives that you have to solve or the game is over, particularly in permadeath where you have so much to lose. And so you get into these loops where you're kind of like circling the same little area where you know you could maybe hide in a building or a cave where you're less likely to be exposed to the elements, but you've hoovered up all of the good resources, or the resources that will keep you alive, so you push on maybe back towards where your ship has crash landed, that kind of thing, towards the opening section of the game. And it's quite sort of engaging. The first time I died just of exposure, basically. The second time I died of exposure again. The third time I got a lot further and I'd kind of learned the ins and outs of what I needed, because like it was running out of plutonium to power my mining laser, that got me the second time, because I knew what I needed, but I couldn't get it anymore because I'd run out of fuel for that. And I don't think that forcing the players to constantly top up different competing fuel bars that each feed into each other is necessarily like particularly advanced game design, but it gave me some pace with that interaction with that environment. And then eventually I managed to repair my ship, which felt like a nice moment and kind of take off and see the galaxy. And there's genuine tension. There's tension to realizing there are pirates in the area or being chased around space because it's more willing to throw enemies at you and that kind of thing. And then landing on a space station and basically just wanting someone to sell me some plutonium or give me some plutonium, because all I really wanted some plutonium, but you don't speak the language as anybody. And I know the Gek word for Gek.
Yeah.
It's Gek. And I know the word I knew the word for Gek, high, and docking.
Hi, Gek. Docking?
I mean, high as in high up, or really high, which is how I think, like, and then eventually that final run, which took about an hour, like I got pretty far. I went to the first planet that I had an anomaly on, but it was a planet that was beautiful and temperate and everything, and nice in every regard, except that it was a shoot on sight sentry drone planet where they try and kill you immediately. And I ran out of plutonium and couldn't take off, and just got into these running gunfights with these drones that would never ever go away. And I got shot to death by a beautiful seashore.
Does the tuning feel off?
Oh, it's fucked.
Well, I mean, because something that I've always felt, I think, in playing was that it uses slightly too much launch fuel. The thing the thing that your launch thrusters need, which I think is the plutonium, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it uses too much for what it does. Like, I appreciate that it's making an effort. Like, it really needs to,
It
like,
has to be
give
full,
you a boost.
and it empties it. So
Is that when you go
Well, it
from
doesn't
like
quite-
planet
yeah.
to space, or just
no,
every
so
time
when you-
every time you
Take
lift
off.
off?
Just basically when you
Whoa.
go from landed to hovering.
Yeah.
And I've always found that, so maybe it does it more obviously in
it's
hardcore mode.
definitely the full bar in survival mode.
But in the sort of intermediate mode that I'm playing on, it's just like it just feels like it does too much. You have to refill it too much. You have to, and partly maybe that's because I got used to having a better ship and a better way of managing those resources previously, and then reset the game, because I'm certainly running into the feeling of, why the hell am I having to refill my pulse engine thing between planets so much? And I'm fairly sure that's a ship change thing. But yeah, like the launch thrusters feels weird.
There's a lot of things about it. Like, it's probably just too demanding to be fun long term. I think playing permadeath mode as a long term proposition, if you wanted to see all 30 hours of the story, is nuts. Like, don't do that. But actually, I thought it was a way of dipping back into the game and having a very different experience with it. I quite liked it. And also, it made me feel less... I think with No Man's Sky, there's a lot of setting your own objectives. There's a lot of kind of trying to figure out what it is that you value in that experience, and then chasing that, and that can feel aimless.
Well, that's why I really love, like, skipping from planet to planet, just trying to find photo opportunities.
Sure, but you've successfully set an objective for yourself, right?
Yeah,
you don't
but that's
feel...
what I mean. It's like, that's what I've ended up deciding I valued, and that's how I play.
Whereas for me, I hadn't really settled on what I wanted to get out of it. I think I said on the podcast when it came out that I sort of started to see it as a sort of freeform writing challenge, which is about coming up with decent names for all of the things you find, which is one way of doing it. But this has made me feel less sort of concerned by min-maxing anything so much as just surviving, which is, I mean, we've said it before, it's a pretty quick shorthand or a quick shortcut to drama for the player, but, I got an extra 3 hours out of it this afternoon just basically waking up in a variety of deadly planets and seeing which one was the one I could get off before I died. Like that in itself is kind of a fun little mini game. It's like, get off this hell world, the game. And the fact that this is infinite procedure generated universe beyond the hell world is a bonus, really. Like, escape the planet of the hench little bear men is a fine game to play by yourself.
I'm interested to see some of the things that it says that it's added. Like, I've already seen more resources, and one of the things that I'm keen to get is the hazmat gloves, just so that I can pick up particular types of things. I'm not sure that would ultimately change the experience, because it doesn't feel like... So in something like Subnautica, it genuinely feels like, oh, if I could just get this thing or harvest this thing or work this thing out, maybe a new world of crafting will open up to me. And I don't necessarily know what to expect from No Man's Sky on that front, whether it will just be, okay, well, now you can just tick this resource bar up, or, use this to get more credits or something. I'm not ultimately sure how these things interrelate. I know that they've been tweaking the crafting and economics like a whole bunch, so I'll be interested to see if it does pay off in terms of, oh, now you can harvest, I don't know what it was, like starberries or something, and I'm like, oh, okay, or frost roses, or these aren't the actual names of the things, but it's similar. And so it would be really cool if being able to actually harvest that specific stuff is meaningful beyond, well, it's a rarer resource, so you get a few more credits, I guess. But yeah, I'm kind of not really sure what to make of it, whether I like it because it's doing the same thing as it was before, but the new stuff just still isn't for me, or whether hopefully there will be something within there that I like.
But it's worth returning to, I think, if you bought it.
Oh, I mean, I'm having fun, and I'm like, taking screenshots of ridiculous animals, and I found like a T-Rex with a unicorn horn and things like that, which was kind of fun. And like odd, just there's loads of weirdos in space, like adorable, awful weirdos. So that's quite encouraging and quite sweet. Although some of them seem to be programmed to be not exactly afraid of you, but to just shun you, which is really annoying. So I'll be like trying to record a video of, a particular creature, and it will sense when you're quite near its front and then turn round. So all you ever see is its bum. Like, oh, come on. Rude. What else has anyone been playing? I think, Tom, you said that you've been playing a lot of little things.
Yeah, I've played a little bit of a lot of things. Some of those things are big. One of them is the 868 hack expansion.
Oh, cool.
Which is not that big. 868 hack is a roguelike from Michael Brough, where you are a kind of smiley face in a grid of sort of programs and viruses, and it's a roguelike where all you can do is move, and your attack, like a lot of roguelikes, involves moving towards an enemy, but in this case range does not matter, so no matter how far away they are from you, moving towards or trying to move towards them will shoot them instead. And many clever things about it. Michael Brough is very good at elegant design, where everything does something and every part of the game is important. And in 868 hack, every empty tile has resources on it, and you have a siphon that you can deploy to sort of sap all the resources from a sort of cross-shaped grid of tiles. And every wall is also a program, which are basically like spells. And if you siphon a wall, you get that spell / program, but it will also summon X enemies, and how many enemies it summons is listed on the wall. So every wall will say something like 5 crash, and if you siphon it, then 5 enemies will appear, but you'll get the crash ability, and the crash ability costs $3 and 2 energy. And do you have $3 and 2 energy? If not, you can siphon the floor, and this area of the floor has $3 on it, which is great, and this area next to it has $2 on it, so you can get them both with a siphon, and that will get you $5. The expansion came to Michael Brough in a dream. He apparently, when he was working on the game originally, I can't remember what he had in mind, but he had some idea for I don't know. He didn't have enough other ideas for mechanics that it came together into something that he wanted to actually add to the game. And then one night, since then, he just had a dream in which the game had an ability called Plan B, which would activate one of the abilities that you don't have yet that's on this level. Because every level is randomly generated, and then what's in the walls is random. And those are abilities that usually you don't have, that you haven't siphoned them yet. And this would be an ability that would just cast one of those spells, basically, like a random spell you don't have that is on this level. And because you can see what's on this level, you would know what the options are, and you could even not use it if there's too many different ones and it's too random, or only use it when there's only one spell out there. And in his dream, it cost, it had a fixed cost, and that meant that sometimes it was super worth it and sometimes it was not at all worth it, because maybe the only thing on this level is a really expensive spell, and so this cost is less than that, so it's great to use it. And then he found that actually in practice spiraled out of control and it was too good in the good situations and too bad in every other situation. So he made it so that it just costs whatever the spell would normally cost. It's just like having that spell just for one thing, except that you don't know what you're going to cost. And then he built a whole load of other abilities around it, and he's done a very Michael Brough thing, which is to complete the set of, almost every ability has a kind of counterpart. Like if there's something that does this, then there's something that does kind of the opposite of that. And there are now there's a fire ability and an ice ability, and there is now an ability for every combination of, I think it's 6 resources or 7 resources or something. So there's one that costs 2 energy and $3, and there's one that costs $5 and 1 energy, and there's one that costs just 6 energy or whatever. It's a lot of the new abilities are kind of esoteric. Plan B is pretty esoteric. There's one called Save, which I had to ask, does this really work how I think it works? Because it seems totally useless to me. And Michael Brough replied to explain why it's useful. But it takes a siphon, which is that thing that you use to get abilities and get resources, and it costs one of those to use this, and it costs $6 or $5. And all it does is save that siphon for your next run. So you don't have it now, but you will have it on your next run. And your next run happens if you finish the run. There's 8 levels. If you finish all 8 levels, you start the game again. And there'll be a sort of random modifier on your run that makes it harder in some way. And so all this does is sort of stash that for next time, but it costs you 5 resources to do. So most of the time it just seemed completely crazy to take. And also it would be quite expensive to siphon. When you siphon it, loads of enemies show up. But apparently it's for like right at the end of your run. If you have a little money spare, you can't take that with you. So, and if you also have a siphon spare, that's the part that seems crazy to me because I'm always using up all my siphons. And last level is where like suddenly there are bits of the wall that just get you 9 points, which is crazy. That's a huge amount. Like early on, it's 1 or 2 points you might get for siphoning a bit of a wall. And so the last level is where you absolutely want to use all your siphons to me. But apparently there are situations where you don't. And so it's full of things like that where there is, I'm sure in pro play, there is a situation where this is useful. But to me, there's a lot of things that just are not useful here. And because it's a game that on every level, there's, you know, they didn't increase the number of walls on each level. There's still the same number of walls. Each wall is either some points or it's a spell. And now the total pool of spells it can draw from is much greater. And most of those new spells are weird and are not directly useful. And the 3 most useful spells in the game are from the original game, where there's one that just hurts all the viruses on the level. There's one that explodes the nearest demon to you, which damages everything around it and kills the demon. And then there's one that, for the glitch enemies that can go through walls, it kills all of them that are in walls. All those 3 are super useful, not only because they can affect a lot of enemies at once, and their direct attacks, they all do like serious damage. But also those are the, you know, viruses are very fast. That can screw you over. Glitches going through walls, that can screw you over because the best way to play the game is get into a choke point and just hang out in there and then summon all the enemies you want because they've all got to go through that choke point except the glitches. And so if you have debug, now everyone else has to go through the choke point and you can kill them. And if any glitches try to go through some other way through the walls, you can kill them with debug. So those are all just really practical, really useful things. They're quite cheap to cast. And now you just get them much less often because there's twice as many spells in total. So they just show up less. Yeah. And instead you get these really esoteric things that are just very hard to use effectively. Like technically this is useful, but only if this situation comes up. And if that situation doesn't come up, it's not that good. The ones I do like, the one I really like is Fire, which is just incredibly cheap. And all it does is just sort of lay a trap on the tile you're on. And then when you move away from it, things get damaged if they move on it, which is a very simple idea. But it's quite weird in 868 hack because it's the only way that I know of that you can ever damage anything when it's not your turn. And that has strange consequences for things like viruses, which can move 2 squares. If a virus is damaged already, and it wants to move 2 squares, but one of those squares has a fire trap on it, as soon as it moves onto that square, it's going to die from it, and therefore it won't get to you. And so that's like one of the only cases where a virus that is within attack range of you is not going to hurt you on your turn because it's going to die on your fire trap. So that leads to interesting things. I'm mentioning it mostly just to sort of remind people that 868 hack exists and is cool. The expansion
called? Is it
Plan
like
B.
979 hack?
No. 868 hack though, there is a full number that it's part of. It's like 868 hack 575 or something like that. And that also relates to like a sort of secret level you can get to by typing that in some way. And the expansion also, expansion is called Plan B after that thing that came to him in a dream. And
I wish I had profitable dreams.
Yeah. I think I have had dreams about heat signature that have solved design problems for me.
Didn't Paul McCartney dream Hey Jude or something? Or like Here Comes the Sun? Or it was something like that. And it's just like, you bastard. I just have weird nightmares about ducks or like monkeys and things.
Who knows? They might make a great video game. Duck Nightmare Turbo.
It's very 90s.
Yeah.
It's the sort of thing you might have put
Jeff
on a
Minter
demo
might have
disc.
made that.
Duck Nightmare 4.
You've been having a different sort of nightmare in the long dark, have you not, Pip?
Well, some and some. Like, I have gone in fits and starts with that game because I absolutely love what it does with the weather. I've always thought that was amazing, and they've only been getting better at it, and now the full release of the game has added the Aurora, which is beautiful, really beautiful. But story mode is kind of a mess, and I hate saying that, but it is. It's like this weird thing that I think I said on the RPS podcast, sorry to name it here, but it can't be for more than like a really specific Goldilocks zone of people where they want bits of tutorial, but they don't, like...
There's an irony to describing this as a game for a Goldilocks zone of people where you predominantly get eaten by a bear a lot.
I wasn't eaten by a bear. It mauled me and ate my shoes.
Still, it's not an ideal Goldilocks scenario.
No, I mean, no, it isn't. But things worked out fine for Goldilocks in the end, my friend.
Did they work out fine for you? Because you're not in the Goldilocks zone.
I've killed the bear.
That's, yeah, well.
I've got its ear. Anyway,
Who's been ripping off my ear?
Who's been stalking me through the forest and shooting me with a hunter's rifle? So it's one of those things where I feel like what they were trying to do was to set up a framework of tasks that would then generate interesting stories, because the survival element makes it maybe hard to complete them, or makes, obstacles spring up along the way that you then have to deal with. Like, oh, go over here and fetch me a thing suddenly becomes, well, yes, but also deal with the wolves and the fact that you're going to get cold and the fact that you haven't eaten enough and the fact that you need some fresh water and, all of that stuff. But ultimately, if you have more than a smattering of familiarity with the sandbox, which I think a lot of people will because it's been in early access for so long, it's one of those things where you know enough that you don't need the hand-holding the game is trying to do, but also that the fetch quests are sort of samey and a bit dull, but you can't just rush through them. There will be people, there'll be people on either side. Like, there will be the people who are sort of super new to this, who maybe do really benefit from that stuff. But then there'll be, the people like me who get kind of frustrated with it and are kind of, really rubbing up against it in the wrong way and just sort of oh, come on, is it not time for the next thing? Or, why are we doing it this way? Or why are you only... halfway through the second episode, it decided to tell me how to forage for things. And I'm like, are you kidding me? I've been living off mushroom soup for a while now, and now it's suddenly there are these things called mushrooms. If you could go out and find me 8 of them and put them in a box outside my house, I will survive the winter. And I'm like, oh my god. But then it goes, I think it's partly because of the order in which I did the survival quests that this person was setting me. But I went straight from collect lichen from a tree, collect mushrooms and put them in the box, to, and now shoot a bear. It's really? And so I was, wandering around trying to shoot this bear. And the thing is, you have to go to specific locations marked on your map where a bear has been sighted and shoot him one time in each of 6 locations.
What?
And
those are his Horcruxes. I've read Harry Potter. I know how this works.
But I shot the bear, I think 3 times in one of those locations, because I thought, well, he's, moving in a particular way and I'm actually getting these shots off and they're clearly hitting him because blood is spattering and things. But it only counted as 1 shot, according to the way that the game dealt with it. And it just became this really tedious exercise in, trampling along and finding this bear and, oh, God's sake. And then if if you angered him by obviously shooting him, he would barrel over and maul you. And it's a slightly overlong animation where a bear is just kind of clawing at your face and roaring at you. But at the end of it, my shoes were ruined. And I'm like, but how?
Shouldn't have put your shoes on your face, Pip.
What was he doing? It's so annoying. And so, the most interesting thing that happened to me was the trek that I had to make in, this blizzard with zero visibility back to a place that I half remembered to just find some extra shoes because I wasn't going to hunt this bear in my socks. And it's like, I feel like that puts slightly too much on me in terms of the storytelling being interesting. And now that,
Yeah.
and there wasn't really a compelling reason either. It was basically like, if you deal with this bear, I'll be able to survive the winter. And you're like, fine. But also,
A lot of your requests seem to come down to I'll survive the winter.
yeah, and it's like, this is the second episode full of this stuff. He's the second person that's like, if you do X, I will survive the winter. If you put these things in the box outside my house, I will survive the winter. You're like, oh, for God's sake. And so, but now because I was doing that so that he would essentially ungate the MacGuffin that was stopping me from, progressing. But now it's like, okay, well now if you wait for a certain condition, then you can progress. And I'm like, oh God. And I was so pleased with myself when I finally took down that bear, because it'd been going on for quite a while. It's been a really dragged out process. And then it's like, okay, well if you just wait for a bit, I was like, oh, just I'm going back to sandbox mode. I'm done.
It sounds like a really bad fit for the kind of game it is. Because I've been waiting for this game for ages because I just decided not to play it in early access. I was going to wait till it's done. And then it was done, and then there's a story mode, and so I had it in my head that the story mode would be sort of the best introduction to the game. Like, I want to be led in by the hand for sure. I don't want to have to spend hours figuring out what to do or read wikis. So I did start the story mode, and I quit it within about 15 seconds.
Oh, really?
I was like, it didn't do anything that other games don't do. It didn't commit any terrible crimes. It was just, I immediately had this powerful sense of, I do not want this game to be this. It was a guy hearing ethereal whispers of someone calling his name, and then he called her name. What's her name?
I think I accidentally had the sound off at that point.
Whatever her name is, he's calling it out into the snow as he trudges through, and then you got a piece of glass in your hand or something, and you got to do a button mashing minigame to take it out. And I got that far, and I'm like, I just don't want to play anything remotely like this ever. I'm just 100% out. I'm just so like.
It's weird because the mentality of the story mode is so different from what I associate with the single player, like with the sandbox rather. But I was talking about this with Adam, and he was sort of saying that he's got to the point with the sandbox where he can survive indefinitely. And so what is survival then for within that?
Okay, it's deep.
It's a pretty deep question then.
And so that was interesting to me because it's like, I think ultimately, instead of a series of fetch quests acting as the framework, I would have appreciated following the story, speeding up your process, but also allowing you to meander through the world or make your way through and maybe piece together some of the, I think it could have done with some of the storytelling that gets done in text adventures, where it's like figuring out where you are and where you've been and what you know at a particular point. And I've forgotten the guy's name, but he gave a really interesting talk at GDC about how this works in one of the narrative heavy games, and like about how it's the game engine is tracking what you as the player know and what the NPCs can maybe feed you at that point. And I think things like that would have been a far more interesting addition to what's going on here, whereas you sort of encounter fairly tropey characters and fairly generic situations in survival wilderness terms, and you're kind of like, well, I guess. But I was mostly just there because I wanted to see the aurora, and I ended up reviewing the second episode because of just a save malfunction in terms of the review build translating over to the final release. But yeah, so it was, it's still so beautiful, and I really love it, and I really love what it's doing in terms of the atmospheric stuff, the time of day stuff, the idea of the aurora doing these weird things. Like, that's so cool. And then that story attached to it is just, and I've faffed for so long with that sodding bear that I'd actually forgotten that I was even looking for someone. And it's like, well, I mean, she's probably dead now. So, what are we even doing with our time, I tried survival mode afterwards, and I still wanted an easy introduction, so I went on the easiest difficulty where it says sort of things don't attack passive
you.
Or pacifist or something.
Yeah. And I don't really know if this was the right call, because the thing I wanted was, I just want to know what does survival look like? What do I end up doing that actually gets me somewhere? And I don't want to be mauled to death by something before I even get to figure out how to make mushroom soup or whatever. And so I've done that, and it's worked in that I've got to grips with the game very slowly and gently, and there's been no threat or anything. And I'm sort of engaged with it, but because I really like, I talked about this a lot with Fallout 4. Didn't end up liking that game, but the first sort of hour or two when I just had no idea what anything was and everything could kill me and everything was a threat just felt so wild and terrifying, and I was so engaged with it. I was just absolutely like, everything was life or death. And I sort of, in a game like this, that's the situation they're depicting, is where it is a terrifying life or death situation where everything's very unknown to you, and you just be walking for a long time with nothing happening at all, but you're supposed to be tense about what is going to happen. And I eventually encountered some wolves, and I had like a sort of second of like, oh no, wolves. And then I thought, oh no, they're not going to attack me because I'm playing on the easiest mode. And then I realized, oh, I've ruined this for myself, haven't I? Like, this is actually not going to work. If there's nothing I'm scared of, then there's no sort of impetus to survive. Survival game doesn't really work if you're not in danger of dying. And so I'm glad I've learned the things I have learned. I still haven't actually like made a meal at any time, so I should do that first maybe. But I think I need to restart on an actual mode where things can be scary, because otherwise, I don't need to be harder, but if I don't care about anything, then it's never really going to grip me.
So I play on pacifist when I want to take screenshots, because I am that interested in the weather that I will just dip into it and stand in a place and watch the time of day shift and the the wind pick up and a blizzard start, that kind of thing. So I really love that, and that's what I use pacifist mode, or whatever it is actually called, for. I would say medium is probably good because of the same thing that Chris was getting out of the permadeath thing, is that you're having to do these smaller tasks, and it's it actually does impose particular weight on decisions, just because, well, you might die, or is there a wolf guarding that carcass that you kind of need for food, or I think I saw something moving but it's twilight and it might have just been a shadow, so I'm just gonna have to like skirt around this clearing, and I might actually end up running into a wolf while dodging what I thought was a wolf but turns out to be a tree stump. It's like it does up the stakes in a way that I think you might find more interesting. Yeah. But yeah, and also I was doing like a email back and forth interview thing with the creative director, Raphael, and he was saying that the Aurora is now in the sandbox mode, which I hadn't actually checked on, but I think it's quite rare, but they might have rebalanced that with one of the more recent patches, because they've patched a lot since the story mode released as well, so it might be worth dipping into that, certainly on the medium mode, Shall we do questions?
You sound very surreptitious about that, Pip. Like it's a secret.
Well, I mean, I wasn't sure whether this was the part where we were supposed to be quiet or loud, and then I got a bit caught in the middle. So we've got the worst of both situations.
Cloud.
Shall we do questions from questions?
Why did you say it such a weird way, Pip?
I'm
going to cut to just that one.
I'm not doing questions from questions.
Yes, you are.
Well, then, you'll have to take one of the other two responses and chop that one out, then.
I'm topping none of this.
This is tedious.
Because people love a good shambles. But first up on the question or phone. It's not a phone.
Question or phone.
It's emails.
Oh.
It's Caroline, who writes, "Hello. I hope you're all so well. I hope you've had a good sunny day recently. Heat signature looks so good.
Yay!
This is also a good question, but we're basically going to read this out on the strength of that amazing intro.
I voted for it immediately.
I mean, it rained. It's raining outside now, but...
Pip, don't dampen this.
It's not me that's dampening it.
It's never raining in space.
In space, no one can hear it rain.
It kind of is in heat signature because you're in a nebula, so technically there's like moisture all around.
So... What games, Caroline writes, recent or not, have you enjoyed playing to your own music library? I haven't found one in a while. I just had a great time mixing Borderlands with Rick Ross, One Must Fall Battlegrounds with Muse, and Team Fortress 2 with Taken and Sarah. I tried playing Overwatch to music, but the sound matters too much. From Caroline. P.S. I always play for a while with the original sound because it's often so good. I play Tyrion and Heretic for the music sometimes. But I also like how it feels to dance to a game when your own music is going. P.P.S. Pip, do you know about blue mosquitoes? My girlfriend showed me. Here's an article with some good pics. They're so cool.
So one, I do, but only because I was reading the article that you sent me while Chris was sorting out the rest of the questions. And so far, so good. Although I've only just hit the bit where it's about them mating and things, because I think that's what the article was actually hinging around. So I'm maybe halfway through. Well,
mosquitoes.
I see what you did there. Although, on a related note, in terms of mosquitoes and attractiveness, there was an interesting art installation at the Wellcome Trust where I think it was called like Are You Attractive or something, and essentially two people would put their hands against mesh where like there were mosquitoes in a container, and you would be the more attractive person to the mosquitoes if they clustered up around your end of
that's super interesting.
It's really cool, it's really interesting, and it also sort of obviously feeds into the idea of like what matters to other organisms in terms of your value to them. Also,
just a nice consolation prize for anyone who gets bitten by mosquitoes a lot. You are attractive.
I think they were kind of, it being the Wellcome Trust, I think they were also sort of, malaria related, points to be drawn. It was just an interesting thing. So that is my gift to you. And thank you for your blue paddle mosquito things.
I strongly associate The Knife with the Hitman series. Actually, we kind of talked about this before, but Hitman is definitely one I always listen to my music for. It has good music for a lot of it.
Nothing but the hits, man.
I play...
I was just waiting for that one to land. Oh, yeah.
That was the aftermath.
Let's leave.
Sit down.
Fine. Yeah, because I play those games so much and I replay the same levels again and again and again, that tends to be the kind of game where I don't listen to the original soundtrack forever because I get sick of it. And listening to my own music, it's just whatever comes on. But also, there have been, albums released at times of my life when I'm playing a certain game for the first time, and that association has been formed pretty closely. Lately, I've been playing Supreme Commander, and that is a game I play purely for comfort. I'm not interested in challenge at all, and I just want to destroy 1 million robots with my 2 million robots. And I would much rather listen to my own music while doing that because it's more varied.
I think I've said on the pod before that I will always associate early Bruce Springsteen with Elwyn Forrest from World of Warcraft, which is a weird breaking of things. Recently, I've been playing quite a lot of solo Dota while listening to quite turned up Tom Waits, which is a weird combination in some ways, but like sort of late 80s Tom Waits, like Frank's Wild Years, one of my favorite albums. Because there's something sort of intense and unpleasant about Dota in a way that I'm now returning to after a couple of months away. I won't go on about it too much, but there's a sort of it's intensely imperfect and kind of frustrating, and people are angry, and it's awful, and the best game ever made, and maybe not, and everything else at the same time. And for some reason, this matches up really well in my brain with why I like Tom Waits, because those are fundamentally like albums about sort of sloppy ramshackle music that's barely holding together, and it's very intense and kind of creates this sense of pressure and kind of heat and intensity.
You know, his full name is Tom Waits and or doesn't.
Nice. But yeah, some reason now those two things are sort of somewhat conflicting. Right, to the extent that the other night I was watching
Tom Waits and Measures.
I was up late watching the International last week, and I switched off. I watched the match in client. This is one of the nights I was up super late. Watched the match in client, switched off all the in-game sounds, switched off all the commentary, and just had really, really loud Tom Waits on while watching the Pro Dota. And
is this how you ended up staying awake till 6?
yeah, there's some aspect of that which might have been like a Dark Night of the Soul kind of experience. I think I went through something. I'm not sure exactly what it was, because they're fundamentally incompatible things thematically, but at the same time, for some reason, they're it's two of my favorite things. So sort of mashing, I basically forced them to mash together into a form that makes some sense to me.
It's like peanut butter and jam.
No, let's not get into that again. That's a normal thing that everyone had as children.
Except
in
no
America.
one.
I had it all the time as a kid. This is a genuine point of conflict in this house. If you think, like I do, that peanut butter and jam sandwiches are completely normal, then let me know.
And also tell us what country you're from.
All right, Tom.
Yeah, thanks.
Doesn't matter. Look, I believe in a post-national identity kind of jam sandwich personal.
You don't, because
identity.
you were specifically arguing that it was common in the UK as well as America.
All right. If you think that's normal or not normal, and you're from the UK, tell me where in the UK you're from, because I kind of want to make this a class thing now.
You should get, the UK snow map with the hashtags on Twitter. You should maybe see whether you can, get people to put their postcodes in and, whether they like peanut butter and jam sandwiches.
Sounds like
Have
work,
you seen the one for the names of woodlice?
Oh,
Or
yeah.
what I call woodlice, being a southerner.
Yeah.
What do you call woodlice?
I call them
woodlice. But apparently other people call them roly pigs and chuggy pigs. And
Wait, oh god.
what is it that America calls them? Is that roly? No, that's roly polies or something, isn't it?
I feel like roly polies is probably a British one. That sounds awfully British.
Yeah.
Maybe...
I'm trying to remember what we called them when we were kids. It wasn't woodlice. I can't remember what it was.
Armoured grey bastards.
No.
There is an amazing map. We should try and find it for show notes. That is the regional names for this just in England, and there are 17 of them.
Isn't it pillbugs in America?
Pillbugs, yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
Because I was always just I just assumed that was a species of animal that we didn't have in the UK.
Until that
hummingbirds
moment.
or something, And then suddenly wait, what? Oh, no, you mean a woodlouse. In a really sort of awful British way.
Until you said that, all Americans listening were just like, what the fuck are they talking about?
Yeah,
What is this
it's
weird
just
insect I've never heard of?
dreadful.
Oh, you mean pillbugs?
Oh, yeah, 10 a penny.
Oh, they're
Well,
like chuggy
10 a
pigs.
cent.
Doesn't
Chuggy
it
pigs.
hate me?
Shut up. That doesn't even make sense in terms of the conversion.
I wouldn't know. I'm too young.
What, 10 a penny? That's 20 a halfpenny.
Says you. I don't know.
Well, a halfpenny is half a penny.
So wouldn't it be 5?
Clues in the name.
Yes. Yes, it would, Tom.
Look, what we've learnt here is that everyone's wrong, including Tom for reasons we've not discovered yet.
Wait, hang on.
Good
That was
maths.
question 1.
For God's sake. Oh.
A person from the internet, on the internet, both, why not, writes, G'day, Clap Crate and Crow Bubsy. An evil wizard has cursed you
Damn it.
to have the same character appear in every game you play. No matter how absurd, they'll be there. Though you can't choose what character will haunt you, you can choose one that definitely won't. The wizard's evil, but not heartless. What character you choose, and why? Thanks for the fabulous pods. Cheers. A person on the internet.
I was thinking the Nightmare from Prey, the gigantic humanoid demon thing. I don't want him to chase me because I found it frankly boring.
But he's sort of he's sort of in his glitchy, kind of doesn't quite work, half implemented way would like probably ruin games more.
Right,
yeah, so
can you imagine though, like you'd be playing like that the point and click of Poirot that Microids came up with, and then there would be just like that nightmare in like a tux and like, you know, just standing really awkwardly to the one side like it wasn't me, I'm not in the books. I mean, this is awkward.
Ironically, Prey is probably one of the best games for it to appear in because it's so easily avoidable. You just hide behind a bush and it just can never find you. Whereas if it came up in like Supreme Commander, it would be a significant unit. I think it would find my base.
I think I would go for, I'm going to summon Dota in 2 subsequent questions. Sniper from Dota. Honestly, fuck that guy. His annoying little voice, his stupid hat, his terrible little beard, his shitty range. Like
His range really good.
He's got extremely, the clue's in the name, but he's extremely long ranged. No game, including Dota, because fuck that guy, should have a character who has extremely long range, and every time they hit you with their rapid fire little pea shooter, it has a chance to slow you. That is the most annoying thing in games.
But it's a chance, not a certainty.
It is, and that makes it worse somehow,
it's
because you
fine.
get these little isolated moments of hope as he plonks away at you. Plonk, plonk, plonk.
But
endlessly.
you should be better at dealing with Sniper. For
Did you
example, getting really close to him and smacking him in the face.
Did you just get good me, Pip?
So, as somebody who plays Sniper,
Yeah.
I am well versed in the ways in which Sniper can get well and truly dumped upon by other people who have the vaguest inkling of how to deal with Sniper. So let's not.
It puts a lot more. It's a lot harder to dump on Sniper than it is for Sniper to dump on you. It's a.
That's flat out not true in my
It's
experience.
100% correct.
Well, that feels like you've just picked a
Go
percentage
auto
out of
attack
the
down
air.
mid.
That's a stupid thing to say.
I know, and I regret
Stupid
saying it.
positioning. This is why you're no good. You don't know what you're doing with Sniper.
Can't believe
You've
you're still
never played
get-gooding
Dota
me.
before.
Anyway, remove him from that game and all games.
I don't
actually,
like the premise of this question.
There's a tiny news item we kind of didn't talk about, which is the OpenAI Dota thing. Where,
Oh yeah, that happened.
So
And also 2 new Dota heroes. They did actually announce some more stuff.
there was some legit Dota news. The AI thing was interesting because sometime guest on the podcast, Mike Cook, chimed in on it, inevitably, because he is an AI expert. And he's actually done a really good blog post explaining why a lot of how they presented that. So what happened was a company called OpenAI showed their AI, or pitted their AI against Dendi, who is a famous Dota champion, in 1v1, is it called solo mid?
1v1 mid.
1v1 mid. Where you're just stuck in the middle lane. It's the first to 2 kills or destroy the enemy tower, and they're both playing the same hero. And the AI handily won, and has beaten many, many pros. And it sort of looks like, that kind of game is semi-solved, from an AI perspective. Mike points out that, for one thing, like 1v1 mid just completely elides everything that's sort of complex or interesting about Dota. It just takes away all of the interesting complexity. So winning at that means nothing for Dota, really. And the other thing pointed out is that 24 hours later, 50 different people beat that AI. And there are loads of exploits that you can get around it. It's just really a case of just figuring out what the AI doesn't know yet. And also it's also pitched as it's a machine learning thing of like, they say, oh, we didn't tell it anything about Dota. We just let it learn by experience and just play a million games. But actually they did totally hard code a whole load of behavior for that bot. Anything that didn't directly involve interacting with other players, they just hard-coded it. Here's how you do this thing.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, because presumably at that point it would only know what it could see in like the fog fog of war when it was playing. So unless it was maybe drawing information from spectating games, that was potentially.
That's the other thing that Mike points out, is that it's not. There are other AIs that actually literally look at the screen and read the pixels in and try and interpret the data, which is massively hard computing problem. This does not do that. There's a Dota API where you can just pull in direct data from the game, and so you can know things that a human player could not humanly know. Like, it's not information that's, like, you can't get secret information of things that are in Fog of War or anything, but you can, automatically, instantaneously trigger a skill on the same frame that the input happens that should trigger it, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it was interesting. So that 50 people beat it thing comes from the fact that Valve did, like, they put up sort of 50 expensive cosmetic items at a LAN pub nearby the international venue and said the first 50 people to beat it will get those items, and all of those were claimed by the end of the night, so at least 50 people beat it.
I assumed that it was like as an incentive to feed the thing more information for more learning.
Yeah, they did say that the next step was to try and teach a team to play the game.
Yeah,
and
so much more complicated.
It's worth not totally discounting the experience of the pro players that it beat, that they sort of read it as playing like a pro player in a way that the regular bots don't, and that's because it has successfully kind of learned optimal ways. Because
wasn't it also successfully executing on like feints?
Yeah,
and,
it was
like,
successfully faking out
and like creep blocking and things like that. Which I think you could probably like find ways to either teach it, or maybe it is less hard to learn than I think it is. But it's a different style of behaviour, especially given, hours and hours of experience with Dota's existing bots and how worlds apart it is from that terrible, stupid experience, because they are dumb as rocks, and it's an interesting experience learning how to game the bots, because that's a whole different skill set in and of itself on top of all of Dota.
Well, that's the thing.
You have to like try and work out how you persuade a bot to leave a lane that you want to be in if you want to do something.
Well, that's
else.
the thing is the bots are dumb, but at the highest level, they literally call it unfair difficulty for the highest level bots in Dota, because it is cheating. Like, it is just full on taking advantage of the things it knows as a bot, and you don't. Whereas I think this is like semi-legit as an interesting training tool potentially for people, because it does play like the most optimal human player, not as the most optimal machine, even though some of the things obviously it has access to information-wise are possibly beyond human ken. But, every year it's surprising, so don't know. Do you guys have any characters that you would never want to occur in every single game? Or maybe the flip side, characters that you would like to show up in every single game?
Well, this is what I was saying when I was thinking that it feels like the question itself is just really, not being offensive, but flawed, because, like, if you have one person that you don't want to show up in games, but then what happens? Like, are you asked to make a list of the other people that you also didn't want to show up in games, and then they'll pick from...
I assume everyone else can.
That worst. Or is just, like, literally everybody else from video games going to show up in every game, in which case the world gets a bit unwieldy quite quickly.
It's like It's a Wonderful Life, but full of the same white dude.
That just feels a bit awkward. But, I mean, if to take the sort of the flip side, the character that I would quite like to see in every game is the Swampling from Simon the Sorcerer, because he was so full of mishaps and like ridiculous sort of pathos, and it was kind of like I would oscillate between being heartbroken on his behalf and also just really hating him. And so it was kind of an interesting dynamic that I think would actually be interesting to see play out in a whole bunch of games.
I would like the pug from Spelunky in all games.
Oh, really?
If I can pick a positive one. He just, at the end of every level, licks you, gain a health point.
Aww.
It's all good.
Back to your Natco, JC.
Maybe a cat. Just like a cat, That would be nice.
Cats are nice, but also nice is Pete, who writes...
Weren't expecting that intro, were you, Pete?
Nice as a cat. And he writes, Hey Podders, I'm listening to your discussion about Hellblade and the controversy around losing your save game, and I was reminded of a couple of things. First, that this is a true...
Should we quickly preface this with, like, it might spoil the small mechanical thing that we talked about last episode? Does it?
Yes. A good interjection, Tom. Skip forward 30 seconds, because I'm going to dwell on this. It really will be 30 seconds this time.
Restart the question if it's...
No,
we
it's fine.
haven't spoiled it yet.
We haven't spoiled it yet.
Okay,
we haven't spoiled it yet.
Sure.
Skip forward 30 seconds if you don't want the implication of a minor structural spoiler
Yes.
for Hellblade.
A minute to be on the safe side.
I'm going to make it even shorter than that now. In listening to your discussion about Hellblade and the controversy around losing your game, I was reminded of a couple of things. First, that this is a true story trick that the Fargo film and TV series uses. I remember being genuinely terrified for Marge's life when I remember watching the film for the first time.
I haven't seen the film.
All right, we want to reverse 30 seconds and forget everything you just heard.
Oh. Well, that was on my Netflix to watch list.
But we read this in the question prep.
Yeah, I wasn't listening. I was reading about mosquitoes. Oh, okay. Well, anyway, sure. Go for it. Whatever.
I think you just did that to stall us out to a minute to prove your original spoiler warning, right?
No, you can go and check my Netflix. Oh.
I can, because...
Let's do that now.
The other thing, Pete writes, I was reminded of was more related to the mechanic itself. I remember when I first started playing BioShock, I played for a few hours, the world was amazing, and I was completely immersed, scared for my own life, until I died. And I immediately respawned with no penalty in a Vita chamber. Now I know there's basically no penalty for death in many other checkpoint-based systems, or if you can frequently save, a la Half-Life. I spammed the quick save button a lot in that game. But the fact that in-game in the setting itself there was no cost for dying really took me out of the world, and I stopped playing there and then. I came back and completed it a few years later, and it was great. On the other hand, in Half-Life, where saving meant there was no cost to dying either, the fact that the in-world threat of death was real meant I didn't lose immersion or my stake in the game. So to get to a question, what game have you been really, really enjoying only to have a single, maybe unimportant mechanic ruin it for you? Keep up the good pod, Pete.
Yeah, the question of distinction between recovery systems that are in fiction and recovery systems that are out of fiction is very interesting, because BioShock's Vita chambers were a kind of mirror of System Shock's nano regeneration, quantum entanglement thingies. And I've always liked those systems. I've never had a problem with them. It's always like, I die and then I respawn there, and I'm still in the world. All the things I killed are still dead. All the stuff I achieved is still achieved. And I'm reset in some way. In System Shock, it costs you a trivial amount of nanites. In BioShock, I think it costs you nothing. And I like that system because I don't want to repeat the things I already did. I'm happy to have another go at the stuff that I failed at, but the stuff I did well, I don't want to have to redo it because I already proved I can do that. So it's very interesting to hear from someone who completely rejected that system, but is 100% fine with quick saving and, the sort of more traditional way of doing it, where you just hammer quick save all the time. You still don't really lose any progress as long as you remember to quick save. But because it's out of fiction, it worked for them. And for me, that distinction doesn't really exist. All I care about is I don't want to lose progress. If I don't lose progress, I'm happy.
Not only do I completely agree with Pete and have the same experience, the only thing that got me through BioShock was a steadfast refusal to use Vita chambers by manually saving and loading every time I died.
Can you quick save anywhere in that game?
No.
Okay.
You have to go to the menu to do a manual save.
But does it sort of save exactly where you are with all your state?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah. Right. So yeah, because I had the same thing. I thought until there is a plot explanation later in BioShock for why that is happening. But I found it so kind of immersion breaking that I preferred not to use it and load saves instead, even though that's not. I find it easier to kind of pretend that the story was just carrying on from wherever I'd saved than to just respawn at a Vita chamber with the world in what felt like a mess. Like the kind of the messy state that I left it, because it usually meant that some combat encounter had obviously gone badly awry if I had died and so on.
Yeah.
The imperfection of it I found really troubling. So I agree with Pete. But yeah, no, I mean, it's interesting because it's interesting you don't have that distinction. Like this, for me it was a real, this feels like it feels like the world doesn't matter because I could just infinitely respawn. Even though actually I think that game narratively holds over the arc of its plot holds together better if you do use that system.
Yeah. Yeah, it is a plot point that you can use that system.
Mm. Yeah, because then I hit that plot point of did you ever wonder why you can use the Vita chambers? And I was like, no. not the slightest.
I also didn't wonder why I can quick save.
You're my son, time travelio. Next question comes from Zoe, who writes, "Hi folks, I've been spending time on a mixture of titles of late Guild Wars 2, StarCraft Reborn, Revamped, Reloaded, Revitalized.
I think it is Reborn.
Recrafted.
Zoe wrote SCR, and I had to guess the R.
Remastered, maybe?
Remastered.
I thought it was Reborn.
I think it's Reborn as well.
Red. There's StarCraft Red and StarCraft Blue. You've got to buy the right one if you want the Zerg.
Get Ghosts in one, and Dark Templars in the other.
StarCraft Moon.
Super Hexagon and the Long Dark. And the thing that struck me about games recently is how on point their music is. It's usually as good or better. It's usually good or better, sorry. And some games have simply incredible music. Got me thinking, what have you played which has irritating, bad, or inappropriate music? The best example I can come up with was the incredible speed at which I turned off the bombastic orchestral score that accompanies CSGO. Such a choice is inappropriate in a competitive environment. My brain doesn't need any more information that could be construed as a gunshot or muffling a footstep. It's also dissonant in tone. The most enjoyable moments are the one-on-one situations where being absolutely calm is paramount, ready to commit a very loud violence to a head. It leads me to wonder if, at worst, bad music is forgettable in games, either through lackluster musical choices or the ability of most games to just turn it off. So what do you all think? Any distinctive game music nightmares? Any crowd favourites that you detest? Thanks. From Patience from Zoe. A good name. Bonus question. Which slime in Slime Rancher is the best? My vote goes for Puddle, as they never start shit and they can always get shy, which is adorable.
Wow. I think the puddle slime thing is correct. It is the correct opinion to be had by anybody. I think I actually said it to the co-founders of Monomi Park who made the game, because I think I'd read on a bunch of forums that people were all like, oh yeah, well, Tabby Slime's the cutest of all the slimes. And it's like, how about no? How about we talk a little bit about puddle slimes? I think my one thing is that I kind of wanted to extend the puddle love by kind of breeding them with other slimes, but them and the fire slimes you just can't breed, because I think because they need very special living conditions, then, you'd be a bit screwed if you tried to breed them with, like the ones that need nighttime. You'd have to find a night pond and you wouldn't know what to feed them, if anything, and it's all a bit confusing.
You're saying that fire and water should have made some kind of
You don't know where you're going with that.
No, I was thinking how much of that song I could quote.
It would just be steam.
Yeah.
But also I really like how willful the quantum slimes are, because they're the ones that are really hard to keep in a pen, because they can, what their thing is there's a version of themselves that is solid and real, I guess, air quotes, and you can put that in the pen, but then they can also project like a ghost glitchy version of themselves, and if they don't like where they are, they can warp to being that thing, like they can suddenly take over the physical inhabitant of the ghost. And so if you don't feed them for a while, or if they prefer to be somewhere else, then they just warp out of wherever you're currently holding them and destroy the illusion of your control over this whole entire thing and decimate your, for example, chicken coop.
Fuck the plot lease. Coming straight from the underground. Tom?
Never have bred them with the pink ones that eat everything.
Have always hated the soundtracks to all RTS games.
That's a terrible opinion.
I don't wish to generalise, but I will say every RTS I've ever played, I've hated the soundtrack for it.
I'm going to throw some suggestions at you. So you don't like the Command and Conquer Metal Hell March stuff? Really?
It's been long enough that I don't entirely remember.
Why don't you sing it, Chris?
That.
It's mostly and guitars.
The only thing I remember from that era is that amongst Command & Conquer's many sort of electronic tracks, there was I'm a Mechanical Man, in which a man sometimes said, I'm a mechanical man.
It's great.
And then, in the great westward blizzard wars of the 90s, was it the 90s? I hope so.
Well, I think Blizzard
Warcraft
only became
2.
Blizzard in 1994, having been previously, what was it, like Silicon and Synapse for 3 years.
God, really?
Oh, yeah.
Warcraft 2
Hot
then
Blizzard facts.
featured a secret track on its CD audio, which was how you did audio in those days, which is like the CD, like the game disc also was an audio CD you could put in a hi-fi.
Maybe
they
that
had a
was
secret
just
track
to
on that
reward the people who just put it in the wrong disc slot.
called I Am a Medieval Man, in which they spoofed this Command & Conquer track, which feels such a weird relic to me now. Like, Blizzard are now so successful that they don't really spoof other people. Well, I guess Overwatch is full of references to other stuff, but that in those days it felt like a war between, you know, Party A and Party B who were on equal terms, and so if Party A did one thing, Party B was going to take the piss out of it.
Now, like,
so they
Westwood got fucking Reigns of Castamere and their house does not exist.
So yeah, they did I Am a Medieval Man, which is a sort of semi-techno track on the otherwise entirely orchestral Warcraft 2 soundtrack.
See, Tom, let me slow you down a little bit. You started this line of thought on the basis that RTS soundtracks are awful, and all I've heard from you is the evidence that they are amazing.
That one song is amazing, partly for its context. But in general, there is an attitude, for some reason, that
What's
there
the
is
songs, if not full of context?
The accepted wisdom for RTSs is that the soundtrack you do is a big orchestral score that is all grand and exciting and ba 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 da 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 da. And I am mining gold while you're doing this, or I am slowly gathering resources, or I'm very carefully planning what I'm going to do next. And it's so, like, it's 90% of the time a huge clash between the mood of the music and the mood of what I'm actually trying to do.
You're missing out on all the metal as well.
No,
Metal often accompanies
to be
the same
fair,
thing.
I'm with Tom on this because it's like these are the game equivalents of, you know how Game of Thrones has a really rousing theme tune, and then like for 6 seasons it was just people really walking slowly across moors, and you're just like, I mean,
but like that's fantasy, right? Like that, you know, that was Lord of the Rings, which was like ba 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 ba.
That's not in the
book. Yes, it is. The book is fucking full of songs.
Yeah, but they didn't have the actual soundtrack. He didn't like ship it with like lyric with he
First
put the
20
lyrics
pages
in,
of the
and
Two
then you
Towers
just
is just
have
talking about him.
It's just a guitar
tab.
I mean, there's a lot that doesn't need to be in Lord of the Rings, but that's not actually one
This
of
is
the
podcast
things.
gold.
It also might be podcast copyright infringement.
I think we just got YouTube blocked.
I don't think that a bot will recognise
Yeah.
any of the songs that you're
Yeah, I'll cop to that. I think I'm safe from copyright
If
filters.
it picks up that any of this
I'll be-
is supposed to be a recognisable song, I will be massively surprised.
I'll be extremely flattered.
It won't be the right song either. It'll just be some random thing. Or all of metal.
I don't think I have an answer to this because I sort of like all game music regardless how dumb it is.
Wow.
I think you must have come across in this pod by the time we got here. Like, I like a lot of shit. And I like a lot of things because it's shit. Like, music is like often one of those things about a game
Wow,
that can...
being your partner right now is feeling pretty great.
I've basically got no taste whatsoever. Not really, shouldn't be trusted to make decisions for myself. No, I mean, music specifically is something that games can get wrong, and it's charming rather than bad, because it doesn't really impede, as Zoe says, you can switch it off. It doesn't really impede the game itself. And if it's exuberantly bad, then there's an energy to that. Like, few things can be as entertaining when they're bad as music can be. Apart from maybe voice acting. Voice acting is a similar thing.
Yeah.
Like, a shit texture, you don't gotta a shit texture doesn't pop up in a game and you go kind of like, way! Look at that barely rendered door. You know what I mean? Like I
don't know. Like there are quite a lot of. You remember when?
No, seriously, hang on.
Limbo of
Back
the
up.
Lost?
Have
Ass
you
Creed,
ever cheered for a badly rendered door?
I probably would. This is me, though.
That's true.
Does it have a blue mosquito in it?
I'd be mad excited.
You know, badly rendered door is the most beautiful phrase in the English language.
It's the name of a 90s indie band.
God. I don't know. I think if I'm not playing something for review, I tend to put the sound down quite a lot, so I can still hear things that I desperately need to, but I will usually have like a podcast or a TV series or something running, if it's not like narrative heavy. You know, if it's me pottering, if it's me in the long dark, it will be, you know, the long dark as soundtracked by Project Runway at the moment, which is, you know, obviously I don't want to sound, I don't want to sound like I'm like, you know, devaluing Hinterland's work or anything, because, you know, there are moments when it has been beautiful and when I have just had the game sounds on and stuff. But I think it's also the fact that, given I spend so much of my life now, my actual working life and my waking life on games, I sort of also have other things that I want to still enjoy or incorporate, and so games that tend to meander or tend to be long, that's when I use that audio for something else, just to keep on top of other things that I genuinely enjoy as well. But yeah, I can't think of anything terrible. Like, I think I just block it out if it's not awesome and jubilant.
I'll quickly mention Far Cry 2 soundtrack, which is very good, but I turn it off. It's good music, but that game benefits so much from just being able to hear the world, and you just really need to listen to everything that's going on. That any kind of music, no matter how good, is just a distraction from that. And so I both simultaneously appreciated the music and liked it, and then also turned it off because I was like, no, I just want to hear the world.
That sounds like what Zoe was saying with CSGO.
Yeah.
Like for slightly different reasons, but yeah.
Next question comes from Jacob, who writes, "Hi, recently I got round to playing Her Story. As the goal is to figure out the details of a crime, I started making notes about the timeline of events, possible clues, and so forth in a separate text file while playing. After a while I realised that I was making very extensive notes in the style of police reports you read in detective novels, even though that was much more work than necessary to get through the game. I was effectively role-playing as an inspector in Notepad alongside the actual game, and this became a major part of the fun. Having to take notes during a game can also be annoying. I remember quitting Eye of the Beholder as a kid because the version I had lacked an auto-map feature and I couldn't be bothered to start making my own map on paper. I wonder how game designers could employ the possibility or even the need to take notes during playing in interesting ways. Do you have examples where making your own notes enriched your gaming experience somehow? Do you know of games that encourage players to take their own notes for interesting effect? Love the pod. Jacob."
I think Her Story is a really good example of a game that just naturally wants you to take notes. It doesn't force you to. It's very much up to you how much you want to, try and understand what you've shown, what you've been shown, and how you're going to piece it together and all that stuff. And that's why it's so good. That's why I like it, is because it presents you with evidence. It's up to you how much effort you want to put into interpreting that evidence. If you don't want to put in a lot of effort, you can just keep on brute forcing it and keep on finding more and more clips, and eventually you'll get it all. You'll figure out the whole story just because you'll see everything. But if my interpretation was like, I've got limited evidence, I need to get as much information from this as possible. So I also took notes in a separate text file, and I loved doing it. Even before it was useful, I was just like, right from the word go, I was like, this is I need to know this stuff, I need to write this down, I need to take notes and interpret this information, and I enjoy doing that. And then, I won't say what, for anyone who hasn't played it, but I did something while I was taking those notes that I was just doing just out of fastidiousness, just out of my own sort of compulsiveness, and then later turned out to be incredibly useful for unraveling the mystery. It was just like, when I looked over my notes, it was like, oh shit, I've given myself the key to this whole mystery unknowingly. And that was great, because I just did it out of, it wasn't irrational. It was like, there's information here, I should note this information. And then later, that information turned out to be incredibly useful. And that made me feel so clever and just made me feel so much like a detective, which is the whole point of that game, right? It's all about that. The game gives you information. It's totally up to you at what rate you process that and how much you want to extrapolate from it and how much you want to just brute force search for it. But for me, the fun of it was starting with not a huge amount of information and getting a long way from that.
I think the way that it presents you with information, Her Story specifically, is quite complicated and quite convoluted and hard to keep track of. And so I think as a person, generally, I think your inclination is to try and make sense of it somehow. And, writing some of it down or jotting notes it feels like a very much a rational response there, in the way that I think other games tend not to be confusing on purpose. You know, they are trying to lead you through their story in some way, and so the need to note take isn't as obvious and as immediate and as, you know, like helpful, I think. But the other thing that I was thinking about was the fact that it's an FMV game, and so once you've triggered a bit of footage, a snippet of footage, you've actually got a little bit of time to sit back from the keyboard and see how it plays out, and so your hands are actually free to make those notes, whereas in other games it's like you have to physically remove your hand from the keyboard and step sort of away from the game. It's not a thing you can do while playing in the way that you can with Her Story, because I find that because I make notes as I play things, especially for review, because just my memory is annoying on that front, and there will be like a thing that I want to talk about and can't quite remember otherwise. And so I do find that that's more of an unwieldy process than I found it in Her Story, and I think it's for those reasons. But also, there have been a fair number of games that have tried to incorporate you having space to, like, for example, there's quite a lot of RPGs that just have a logbook where you as a player can make your own notes. They give you a diary space, right? And I've always wondered who the hell uses those, because I just, like, you know, who? Why? Like, well, what are you doing? Like, what are you jotting down in those moments? Not in a disparaging way, it's just that it just never feels like a natural fit. And I think the DS, like, people tried it a lot with the DS, because it was like, oh, well, you've got a stylus in your hand, therefore you can actually make written notes, or you can try and map out like a, you know, you can draw out your own treasure map, or, you know, whatever else. And it's a bit like, well, but in this situation it doesn't work, because it's like, you know, the screen is small and it's hard to make out what I've written, and, you know, like, you can only fit a certain amount on the thing because of the size of an individual pixel, that kind of thing. So, like, I think people have tried it and it has been interesting in some regards, but, like, I think there's an amazing combination of giving you a load of jumbled information you need to sort through to start making sense of it, and also giving you the opportunity to have your hands free. That is a sweet spot that Her Story hits.
No, I totally agree.
Problem solved.
Yeah, I can't think of too many games, more other games recently where I've happily made notes. The last time I got really extensive with it was the Space Sudoku in Mass Effect Andromeda. But that's only because it was necessary to translate into actual characters rather than like freaky G and backwards E and alien F and all the other wacky characters that show up in that excellent game that people should feel bad about not liking. Next up, Ryan writes, "Hello. I know you sometimes do this already, but can you either announce what you're drinking at the start of the podcast, or better yet, list it in the show notes? That way I can drink along, which I assume will enhance my listening experience. Thanks, Ryan."
Today, it's too late now, but today we were drinking Jim Beam Red Stag, which is the cherry thing they do. Jim Beam is my whiskey of preference, the bourbon. And it's weirdly cheap, but very, very good. Like, I used to buy a whiskey that was way more expensive, a single malt scotch, and I prefer Jim Beam, and Jim Beam is half the price. And this is the cherry version, which I thought was like whiskey with a bit of cherry. Actually, it turns out it's cherry liqueur with a bit of whiskey, but it's good.
It's been all right.
I think this is interesting because they can have a very different experience depending on whose drink journey they choose to follow, because a lot of the time I won't even bother trying to keep up with you guys, or I'll have to do something relatively early the next day, or like I'll just need to not be, you know, obviously hungover for work or something. And so, you know, it'll be like, you can choose to follow what they're doing, or it's like, or you can have sad cup of tea with him. I, for example, now have a Coke Zero. Although I was drinking the Colonel's Porter earlier, and I did have some of this. But yeah, it's kind of, it's interesting. You can have a kind of choose your own drink adventure with this sometimes, maybe.
but do so responsibly.
Really responsibly. Even more responsibly.
Responsible Duncan writes...
Is he?
Well, I don't know. Dear recently deceased member of the Crichton Crowbar.
What?
Is Marsh okay?
Due to an unfortunate turn of events, you have died.
Oh.
What?
Fortunately, you found yourself in video games heaven.
What?
I don't want to go there.
Unfortunately, you got in by such a small margin that you only get to pick one aspect of video games heaven.
What?
What?
Which do you choose?
What does that mean?
What are the options, Chris?
I was just waiting for you to say what.
What are the options, Chris?
What do you choose? 1. Zero latency, both input and network. The two sexiest kinds of latency. 2. Play sequels to every game of your choosing. 3. There are always enough players playing multiplayer for every game you play. Ontaro, Create and Crowbar. Duncan. P.S.
What?
You may assume that games are ported to heaven as they are released IRL plus some small exclusivity period.
Is he saying that heaven isn't IRL?
He's saying that heaven is a place on earth, Pip.
He's saying heaven isn't a place
Pip, do you know
on
how
Earth.
much that's worth?
It's worth zero latency.
Well, she never gets to that. She never actually does the currency conversion.
It's 89p. Anyway, Tom.
Ooh, baby, do you know what that's worth? Ooh, baby, £1.80. So, option 2. Tell me what option 2.
Price of a Magnum.
The sequel to every game of your choosing? If I choose
Doesn't
Deus
say
Ex,
they're
do I
good.
get Deus Ex Human Revolution and Deus Ex Mankind Divided?
Presumably you just keep getting sequels.
I just get infinite sequels, but also to every game of my choosing. So I can choose multiple games for this option and get all possible sequels.
It's look, I don't make
including ones that have already been released and ones that could be released in the future. This seems like an absolute slam dunk to me.
Well, I took it as you get a second game in the same series as a game of your choosing.
That doesn't yet exist.
So, like, I didn't take it to be, like, infinite sequels in terms of, like, you wouldn't get Deus, like, 2 through 9,905,000 or whatever.
It says play...
Those are the only numbers there are.
2 and 9,105,000.
By way of counterpoint to that, I would say it says play sequels to every game of your choosing.
It doesn't say they're good.
Plural sequels
They might be
and
shit.
plural games.
Yeah. Everything's pluralized in that.
The only thing that I'm unsure of is does it refer to sequels that have already been made, or does it refer to sequels that have not yet been made? Or both?
I assume it might be notional.
Gamers heaven is pedants hell.
I don't know, it's pedant's heaven if judging by this nonsense.
To be honest, I so much prefer single player games that's probably my choice no matter what it means. Even if it means sequels that have not yet been made to my hero games, which would be like, Dishonored, Deus Ex. The next Dishonored game from Arcane is not going to be less than brilliant, right? It's going to be fucking amazing. The next Deus Ex game might not be super great, or it might not be as good as Human Revolution, because Mankind Divided was slightly less good than that, but they're both good.
Maybe you'd be like the QA for sequels. Like, they would just pass it through you, and then you'd be like, this is tedious. And they'd just be like, I guess we won't release that on Earth then.
Can they not fix it and give me the fixed version?
Maybe we should not.
I like to feel my feedback would be
this.
so informative they would know.
It's like you're just the only person playing them.
Yeah, also if I was their only target audience,
Because
they would
literally
have
no
to...
one else will pick that option.
Everyone else went for their multiplayer options. I'm the only guy wanting Deus Ex games, so they have to make them all to my spec.
The thing is, like, the multiplayer thing is such an obvious slam dunk for me, because that means that I'll just play Tribes in heaven, which is fine. That's where they play Tribes.
I was about to deliver a rather mean remark about Battleborn at that point, but it just feels like it's already dead.
Stuff like that's why you're not going to video games heaven, Pip.
Yeah, that's true. I'd go with the multiplayer thing simply because I like playing enough multiplayer stuff that it would just be nice to have that as an on-tap resource. What I think I would like is for the ability for matchmaking to, like, for it to be not only, you know, enough people to play with, but also for matchmaking to be perfect, you know? For it to be an actual enjoyable challenge, because like I'm also aware
it's too easy at the moment with all these scrubs.
Well, like in terms of what I just said to Tom, which is that it really didn't specify that those sequels were going to be any good. It also doesn't specify whether these people are going to be jackasses or not, you know. So it might just be like, you can play all of the games you want in low priority. Enjoy that, idiot.
That's fair, but this is video games heaven, not...
I still don't believe that video games heaven will be... I'd just rather go to heaven.
On balance.
Like, imagine.
Is there actual heaven available? Because...
It's just, come on.
in my video games heaven...
All you have achieved in life was video games. All you've achieved in death.
In my video games heaven, I think the multiplayer games will be balanced such that I'm put in a slightly lower bracket than I deserve. So that I just always win.
Press trips.
Yes. That is, that's legit. Like,
Smurfing.
I remember...
Smurfing your way through the afterlife.
Playing... God, I can't remember which Call of Duty, one of the Modern Warfares, at a press event, and, you know, reviewing a single player thoroughly, and then doing a multiplayer press event it was before release, so no other people had played it. It was only journalists. And I was a fucking god. I was the for that moment, I was the greatest player in Call of Duty.
It's amazing, isn't it? Like,
that will never happen
I
again.
I said this on Twitter a couple months ago, I think, but like, honest to God, press events for competitive games are like fucking Westworld. It's like a magic world you enter where you can only win every gunfight.
Well, hang on. Is this why you want to spend your entire afterlife playing Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2?
No, I don't. I still want option 2.
You literally said that.
No, I still want option 2. I'm just saying, if you gave me the multiplayer option, this is how it would manifest for me. Everyone is slightly worse than me. To be honest, everyone's slightly worse than me, and it's Half-Life 2 deathmatch with gravity gun only. That might be heaven. Throwing radiators at people, I just don't think that ever gets old.
Like, you don't think that you'd want to do other things? Like,
have you seen a radiator hit someone at full force?
You've got eternity. I'd like some toast at some point, you know? Have a bath. Maybe a walk.
You could throw a radiator at some bread. You might get some toast out of it.
Toast?
The kinetic energy would magnify
it's like
the
that
actual
metaphor where,
energy.
you know, like that whole thing, I don't know where it's from, but like, the heaven and hell are exactly the same. But it's people with the long cutlery and
the chopsticks.
The banquet table and heaven and hell are each a banquet table and everyone has cutlery that's so long that it, you know.
I thought it was like they have 6-foot chopsticks and the people that only try and feed themselves obviously can't, but then the people who feed each other like have a lovely
feast.
time.
Yeah, I've heard the same
heaven
story.
and hell are the same setup, but in heaven people are feeding each other, and in hell they're all trying to feed
It's
themselves,
like
and
that,
they can't.
but with gravity guns.
You can't throw a radiator into my own face. I need you to do it for me.
Exactly.
Well, you can't throw the toast into your own radiator.
I'm flinging limp bread at this radiator. I need your help.
Although at this point it's like, just eat the bread. Like, I mean...
It's not that bad. Like, toast is better, but it's not that much better.
I tried to do some sick toast rebounds off this wall into my own face, but it's not working. Shoot toast at my face.
There'd be like
Neighbour.
there would be one of those like walkthroughs of like how to like throw the exact right angle to get it into one of the grills on your radiator to actually.
It's
get
almost
the
hard to
toast
believe
done.
that our generation has not come up with any of those lasting metaphors.
Well,
heaven
this
and hell
is the thing.
thing.
Like, actually, hell would just be like all of the toast you can eat, but everyone's just sat around going, "But where's the avocado? This is uneatable."
Well,
I can't believe millennials killed the hell industry.
Killed the moral decision industry.
Good.
What do you mean good?
I don't know. Sometimes I just say the word good, Pip. Diffractor writes, Dear Crow Bastards, seeing lots of Far Cry 5 news and thinking back to my time with the original, it's so different to what the series has become. One could almost say it was a ellipsis, second ellipsis, different game.
Oh, is that not?
Genre, different genre. I can read.
I thought that they were gonna do like a ... Far Cry from the...
Yeah, that would make a lot of sense.
I think that is the joke.
Are we not... Have you... What?
The joke is that he didn't say that.
Right, okay,
Yes,
but then you didn't say what he said anyway.
Look.
Or she,
I'm sorry.
actually.
I think I recognise the name from Discord. I think it's a him.
Okay.
This is a very Andy from Parks and Rec format of joke where he says, like, he's dating a girl called April and says, I wrote you a song. I just not spoiling anything. It was about a month of the year. And she says, is it called April? And say, oh no, that would have been way better.
Well, whatever kind of joke it was, I fucked it up, Tom. I played it, Far Cry, he means, because it reviewed well, and in my experience, it was hot bullshit. Enemies that could shoot you through walls were bullshit enough. My main grudge is that it had the trappings...
Oh, is this a grudge?
I guess so. Had the trappings of a stealth game, even a stealth meter that encouraged you to try and play in a way that was totally unsupported by the game, especially because of the omniscient AI. I could heap anger on that game for a while. I remember going full Tom Francis, and he says in brackets, oh, for fuck's sake. But actually it's, oh, come on.
No, I think this might also be a joke.
I say both those things.
I mean, Tom does say for fuck's sake sometimes.
Yeah, I say both those things.
But
I don't know. I think
oh,
I'm
come on,
quite enjoying
it's the classic.
I'm quite enjoying the Andy, reading of this. This is good.
On the 11th time I was shot to death behind a bush from miles away, but to make this a question, which games have led
So it's
you
not
to...
a grudge.
I'm so sorry that we've fucked this question so
To
badly.
betray Pip.
Let me finish. Which games have led you to believe you can play in ways that they actually don't support? Thanks for podding, Diffractor.
I don't know.
Well, like...
Call of Duty rather encourages the idea that you can play it at all without getting sniped in the back by some jerk.
That is the game.
No.
It is.
It implies that it isn't, and yet it always is.
I had a chat with Clifford Blazinski about exactly this subject today.
But he doesn't make Call of Duty.
No, but he knows why it's bad, and that's why it's bad, is that's what it's designed to do.
That's not what you're supposed to do. That's not what you go into the game thinking. It's what you resign yourself to.
Yeah, but it is the game. It's shooting people in the back and then being
But
shot
that
in the
wasn't
back.
the question.
No, it wasn't. Why are you talking about it?
Because, wait, what was the question?
Who knows?
No.
It was...
We know. We can literally find out.
Which games have led you to believe you can play in ways that they actually don't support?
Exactly. They've led me to believe you can play it fairly. Anyway, sorry, Tom.
Like many of the questions we get, the issue it raises is very interesting, and I don't actually have an answer to the question that it then raises, which is different. The issue it raises to me is Far Cry 1 a good stealth game, which I have really strong opinions about, and they do not match up to, was it Diffractor?
Yes.
I've now got Reflector by Arcade Fire.
They do not match up to that. I really liked Far Cry 1. Far Cry 1 was one of the first, sort of hybrid FPS stealth games that I really got into. Thief existed, but Thief was not a hybrid FPS stealth game. It was a 100% stealth game. It just happened to be first person. Far Cry was it was an action game, and also you could play it with stealth. It's been so long since I played it that I can't swear that the stealth mechanics were not bullshit. They may have been bullshit. It was the kind of game that would sort of switch gears from level to level. So there'd be a level that they sort of intended for you to play in an actiony way, and a level that they intended for you to play in a stealthy way. For me at the time, that worked. I don't remember rubbing up against the wrong way of that. I don't remember ever trying to do a thing that the level just outright did not allow. There were, what are they called? The mutants. The trigens, were bullshit. And I think they often had psychic vision. I feel like the human enemies, I don't remember the human enemies being total bullshit. I remember the thing that kind of amazed me about that game was it sort of, it had the rock throwing mechanic, which is, I won't say it invented it, but that's a thing that nearly every stealth oriented, game does these days. Just you can throw a rock anytime, anywhere. Doesn't matter how, you don't run out of them. They're not a resource. You can just always distract an enemy to send them in a certain direction. Certainly the Far Cry series has kept that, and it's a really, really good mechanic. And it had had a vision meter, and then on your map it also showed like sound range rings for every sound you ever made, both on yourself and also if you threw a rock or whatever, if there are sounds elsewhere, you could see the sound emanate from the location of that sound on your minimap and see how far it reached and which enemies it affected, and if it didn't affect an enemy, they wouldn't come and look for you. And I guess like the levels that were set at night were sort of explicitly stealth levels and they were meant to be played in a stealth way. But playing those as a stealth game, I really enjoyed, and really it just seemed to have so much more mechanical depth than other stealth games I played at that time. You know, its competition was like Splinter Cell 1, which was okay. It was good for what it was, but it was basically a light meter and that was it. And yeah, this was, I remember that being one of my first great stealth experiences. I won't swear to God that on every single level you could play perfectly stealthily and it wouldn't ever bullshit you. Maybe it does in some other levels, but it had mechanics.
Good answer. Finally, Kane writes, "Hello! As you know, the title of any work with the word dark in the title can be improved by changing it to dork. For example, Dork Souls, The Dork Side of the Moon, Zero Dork 30, and The Heart of Dorkness. Similarly, changing space to spice also improves any title, as in Endless Spice, The Solace of Open Spices, and 2001 A Spice Odyssey. It also works for most famous quotes. Spice, like time, engenders forgetfulness, but it does so by setting us bodily free from our surroundings and giving us back our primitive, unattached state. I have assembled a comprehensive list of relevant game titles as evidence, seen here. The game provides a link to a staggeringly long and comprehensive list of games with the word dark or space in the title, thusly adjusted. My question is, are there any other simple letter substitutions or other minor word changes that automatically improve the title of a game? Regards, Kane."
It doesn't really fit with the exact substitution that he references, but as he was saying it, I couldn't help thinking of Horizon Zero Dork. Which is, I mean, then you'd have Dork of War if you replace Dawn with Dork. Maybe Game with Dame, because then you'd have Dame of War. Dame of War Fire Age. It's pretty good.
That's pretty much how that was advertised.
Yep.
I have for a long time been mentally substituting the word dark, which already came up in the case of dark to dork. Dark to dank happens quite a lot in my brain. Just naturally now, I see the word dark as dank, because R's and N's are very similar. It's barely even a substitution so much as extending the lowercase r slightly. So that creates Dank Souls, Dank Messiah of Might and Magic, and so on.
What about War to What? So Call of Duty World at What?
That's really good.
What hammer?
What hammer?
What hammer?
World of Whatcraft. Dawn of What?
Game of What?
Middle Earth Shadow of What?
I'm sorry, Shadow of What?
That is the correct response to Sexy Shelob. Shadow of What?
I'm sorry, Shadow of What?
I think this ties into a conversation.
Call of Duty Advanced Whatfare.
Modern Whatfare.
It feels like you're trying to get on a bus and you don't know if you've got enough change.
Sorry, Call of Duty Advanced Whatfare? It used to be 420. If you're telling me it's 450.
It used to be 420.
Yes.
That's like...
That was just the first number that came to my head. Don't want to discuss it.
Pretty dank.
Used to be 180. I've got no scope for these jingles.
This
It's
what
twice as
mine-
much as 180 now.
This actually ties into a conversation that you and I were having, Chris, about like people having nicknames for games. And I think it being a relatively new thing for you in that you have a lot of nicknames that you give to Dota and to Plunk.
To be fair, in my own defence, this was a stupid thing I said that I realised was immediately wrong in that I've been making stupid nicknames for games forever.
And then I explained it to you and you were like,
yeah.
This is annoying that you keep on explaining this to me now that you know you're right about something.
Yeah.
But I was actually thinking it might be quite nice to invite people to send in the nicknames that they have for games, like sort of silly ones, like not, not just swear words or anything, but like, because I know that when I was a kid, I used to call Banjo-Kazooie Banjo-Kazoodle, and that was just a thing that like, I don't know how it ended up happening, but like, and then everyone just sort of knew what I meant, but it only became embarrassing later in life when they released ukulele, and I kept forgetting and kept calling it Banjo-Kazoodle, and then that necessitated too many explanations, and it was like, oh, this is just cutesy.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose every multiplayer game at the moment is either a Plunk or a Dote, which is not the name of either of those games.
And you go with Plunk Bag instead of Plunk Bat,
funnier.
which is what Alice goes with when I talk to her about it.
Although she does say she didn't invent that.
No, I think she borrowed it from a YouTube streamer. So yeah.
A YouTube streamer?
You can stream things on YouTube now. They added the facility for that. I was at the press release for that.
Wow. What a time to be alive.
Like, no, don't pivot on that insult. That's just bullshit.
What?
Don't-
What is it good for?
Lame. Anyway.
Star Watt. Empire at Watt.
Brood Watts.
Starcraft Brood Watt.
Oh, I hope this is funny to sober people. As well.
Starecraft. Stare Citizen.
Yes.
By changing,
my
it's
God.
quite funny. You wouldn't necessarily associate the word stare with old people, but every game you change that in, I just think,
Yeah. I mean, Star Wars. Star Trek.
Still quite like Starecraft.
It's tough to make stairs, man. It's a lot of work.
Exactly. It's a long kind of sim of just carpentry.
If you combine our substitutions, it just becomes a Stair Watt.
how about Warhammer Total Watt?
No, it's what
What?
hammer.
Total Watt.
Rome Total Watt.
What hammer? Total Watt.
What are we talking about?
I think have we reached the productive end of the podcast?
Yes, Pip, and now it is
Long
time
ago.
for the outro.
Hey, before the outro, my middle name is Edward.
I did know that.
Twist
Yeah,
ending.
I did know that.
Not interesting, as warned.
Tom, Ted, Francis.
Yeah, they're all kind of first names, that they're also saints.
They all get shortened as well. It's all Tom, Ted,
Yeah.
and Frank.
Tommy, Eddie, Frankie. If I want to be an Italian gangster, I can totally put it off.
You could be three of them at the same time.
Hey,
It's useful if you are a
gangsters,
mafioso.
and Tommy, and also
It'd be really
Frankie.
useful
Also-
for like making a reservation at a restaurant. You could be all three people.
Frankie Five Fingers, because then the pentadact thing is included.
Oh, I see. But you've got 10 fingers. Well, you've got 8
Or
fingers.
per hand.
Is that why you need other people? So you've got Tommy 5 fingers and Freddie 5 fingers, so that you actually
Wow.
got 10 fingers.
So
I
does
don't
that
know where
mean
Frankie
Edward
Five
has no
Fingers comes
fingers?
in.
Edward's just got feet. Edfoot. Tedfoot.
What?
Tedward Scissorfoot.
Ted what?
TEDx.
Yeah, Ted just talks.
Wow.
I don't...
Pip, this is on you.
Oh, God. Hang on. Right, it's been a while, and I don't really know all of the things. So, you've been listening. That's nice. Thank you for that.
Wow, we never thought to acknowledge that before.
We are on... Oh, you can send questions to questions@crateandcrowbar.com. It is .com, right? Not .co.uk. Okay, cool. You can find the website, crateandcrowbar.com, where there is also a link to the Discord forum, where you will find all manner of lovely people talking about various things, mostly to do with games, but some not. Sometimes cats. Sometimes insect pictures. Thank you for those. And then there is the YouTube, which is youtube.com/crateandcrowbar, and the Twitter, which is @crateandcrowbar, and there is the Patreon, which is patreon.com/crateandcrowbar, and then there is also, hang on, let me get this, let me think. I think that might be all of the things. You can review us on iTunes, which is a nice thing to do, although I think it might be Apple Podcasts now. It's been a while. 5 stars is the preference, obviously, but, 4 at a push, I suppose.
Wow.
It depends how you think this is gone.
What kind of monster are you?
You can follow us individually. That's a thing as well that I can fill time with. I'm at Philippa War, which is PHILIPPAWARR. What?
Philippa what?
Tommy Five Fingers is
at PENTADACT, which is short for Pentadact, which is short for Pentadactylus, which means five-fingered.
Chris, who are you?
I'm on Twitter at CThursten, that's CTHURSTEN.
Is that everything? Do we need more things?
It's over. We did it.
Were you getting ready to say the thing?
I was.
Okay.
Tom was.
Okay. Were you?
I was thinking about it.
Are we gonna all go at the same time? Okay, good. Thanks.
Thanks
for
listening,
everybody. The Second World What?
Call of Duty Infinite what?
Mech what?